Monte Cristo, eSports Private Eye, come in.
Monte, I need your help.
What's going on? Calm down there, sweetheart. Tell me what happened.
Griffin, they went deep into IG territory. It was supposed to be a stomp, and I don't know what happened.
Are they dead?
They're dead. They're dead as dead.
All right, calm down. I've got a Gank Wars expert that can help us with this case. I'm going to call Thorin. He'll meet us at the scene, okay?
Okay.
Let's go.
Oh, Griffin. My dear Griffin. Oh my God. You died too young. Tarzan, Chobi, my pick'ems.
Thank you for coming, Thorin. I know you're an expert on gank violence, and I need your take on Griffin dying deep in IG territory.
It's okay. I've seen a lot of team fights in my time.
Okay. The body's been removed, but I have some photos here. Need to identify cause of death. First off, we have some choke marks around the neck.
I can tell you, that's a red herring. Those were from a prior best of 5.
Okay, so not the cause of death. Means it must be this. We have here a stab wound to the stomach. What do you make of it?
I'm afraid that was self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted?
Really?
It seems they used a sword to disembowel themselves.
That's a damn shame. What can we do to prevent this from happening again, Thorin?
Forget it, Monty. It's Koreatown. Eat your hearts out, LEC. We only thought that up like 1 minute before the show went live. We don't even have a massive budget the whole week to plan stuff. We just do stuff like that, baby. That's how we do it. So anyway,
We're getting better every
I think
week.
it's pretty good. I thought we hit the notes there.
It's not that bad, right?
It was kind of required that it was, so that's the point.
Yeah, that's
isn't
the point.
Yeah. You actually played up to the sort of like, I don't know, he's almost like a method actor. It was like very cardboard. Like he tried not to seem like he knew modern acting techniques, you know?
So somebody who loves film noir, and obviously like we put the Chinatown joke in at the end, I did enjoy that when we were discussing this, the Loco Doco's frame of reference was like the Nicolas Cage black and white Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse. Like he actually just took a joke about film noir and thought it was film noir. Maybe some of you now think that that segment is film noir.
You guys,
I don't know that we made.
You told me it was about detective. You told me it was in black and white. I was like, oh, it's like that black and white Spider-Man from the Spider-Man thing.
Anyway, before we get ahead of ourselves, this is the 9 Summoning Insight presented by AT&T, episode whatever. I think it's like 86, I think it's this one perhaps. And coming up on the show, we've got 2 guests this time. We've got Westrice, who obviously works for Cloud9 now. We've got Damonte, so we'll have Monte on Monte action later on. We'll find out who the real Monte is, actually. The one who really deserves the name. We'll have a battle, one name match, loser leaves town or something.
Well, you can tell it's content I'm on because it's WTF2 Montes, right?
There we go.
We have the Monte mirror match. Oh, not possible, actually, on Riot's broadcast anymore.
Sadly gone.
Yep,
exactly.
Cancelled.
And then obviously we have the stream of the crop, which is what was the name for the highlights package, if you remember. We obviously have the fan memes, which is in association with Puma, where if you're from NA, you could win the memes there. And then do not forget, we always have the Discord section where people can call in and actually potentially ask us a question. So to do that, join the Cloud9 Discord. There'll be a questions channel. Put them in there. If you've seen the past episodes, the way it works basically is we pre-screen the people that we're going to have based on the question, and then Monty will drag you into the chat, unmute you. He'll say like, what's the question, and then hopefully in a timely manner you'll ask us your question.
We say ask questions, but usually we take their questions and we're like, no, we don't like this question. What about we talk about this topic?
That's actually the secret to talk shows, by the way. I know most people don't know this, but actually a real reason why I don't actually like them to be too regimented is because I actually think it works best if I say something to you, even if I ask a question, if you're not that interested in that topic, you might as well just tell me what you're interested in and spin it your way, and just start talking about that angle. So I actually think I don't mind either way because like the fan should be allowed to ask his question, but you're right. We editorialize. If their question is rubbish, we go, what you should have asked is this, and then we just talk about that. I think it's also in fitting with our branding, really, in many ways,
Yeah, definitely.
Here's what he should have asked to win the gift card, but you do win. So.
Yeah, definitely true. So you can enjoy that later. Call us plebs, and it'll be somewhat of a good time, maybe. Anyway, that'll be at the end of the show. Obviously, keep sending us your memes, hashtag the 9s.
There's been some pretty good ones recently.
Yeah, there have been some pretty
They're getting
funny
better.
ones. You guys are getting better at memeing. We're proud of you. So we will show those and give away Puma gift cards if you are North American and 18 years or older. But you know what? Even if you're not any of those things, send them to us and we might feature them anyway. You just can't win Puma gift cards, unfortunately.
And make sure you follow Cloud9.
Ah, yes. You have to follow Cloud9 on Twitter so they actually can contact you and give you your prize. Very important. Very important. Anyway, I think we do have to get this out of the way first. So before we start talking with Westrice, who will be our first guest up, who is the coach of the C9 Academy roster, let's discuss the SNL sketch that happened very briefly but a lot of people were talking about it, so I do think that we have to give some level of our thoughts with Chance the Rapper being the LOL reporter. A lot of people were mad at this. I thought it was mildly amusing.
Yeah, I'll say there's two parts to this. Like, first of all, on the surface, I understand why people are going to get mad, because it's actually one of the things in esports that annoys me, is that certain people in the community who've been around a long time will just go like, outsiders saying something about esports, right, whatever they're saying must be wrong and ignorant. It's like, first of all, the premise of this, like how nerdy they all looked at the beginning of that setup. Dude, that looks like Season 2 Worlds. Like, remember how bad the setups used to be at the beginning of LCS, the first ever tournament? Because it was very early in esports. It was like almost, 2012 would have been Season 2 is. So back then it was just like a bunch of guys, like it would have been Monte in a bad shirt going, welcome to the broadcast. You know, like that's what it was.
I never would have worn a bad shirt, but sure. But the point is like, these guys who are on the desk are being presented as experts and broadcasters. It's the fish out of water is like the sideline reporter character, Chance the Rapper.
I even thought that was a vaguely funny.
I thought some of his takes were funny, especially like the girls running after the pro player and his like surprise about that.
Yes.
I mean, these are things that people are actually surprised
I
about.
agree.
So I thought it was like, look, it wasn't great, but it was mildly amusing satire.
Homie, everybody wants to know.
It is just very satire, and I like mainstream being more interested in esports and like even making fun of it. Like they are recognizing like esports is huge, right? Like if we were tiny, they wouldn't even talk about it.
I mean, I didn't think this was even inaccurate. Like it is ridiculous.
Like we all know there's terrible interviews and there's people who can't answer. And then the idea of like why should be in a room is just a stupid video game play.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. So it is actually one of the more hilarious parts of the industry, I think.
I mean, I will just say this: it's also a great point, right, to illustrate how things go from being weird and like arbitrary to you just accepting all the premises and just thinking that's normal, right?
Yeah.
Because Chance makes himself a joke where he goes like, and there's a lot of like nerdy guys, and for some reason, thousands of people are watching them do this, even though all they do is play video games. It's like, Chance the Rapper, your job is you literally go on stage and perform poorly thought out poetry, a field you definitely didn't invent, and then thousands of people in that stadium who could be watching the NFL cheer for you. Like, you also have a ridiculous job on the face of it, which funnily enough could have been mocked 50 years ago on SNL. Like,
of course,
but that's the point, is like, just as we now accept him as a legit art form, in the future there'll be less mockery, it'll become like a sport. Because obviously you can make fun of any sport, couldn't you? They're all silly.
I mean, also, like, the premise of it is that if they're doing satire, they expect people to have heard of this, which implies that at least the League of Legends World Championship has cracked into the mainstream in some way.
It wouldn't actually be that funny if you thought everything they said was totally on point. You're supposed to also know they're over-egging the pudding a little bit. They're doing a joke, exactly. Like, you have to get the premise to know why it's funny, actually, what they're making fun of.
Monte, I know you were like owner/manager before. My coach/manager instinct kicked in so hard when I saw like the player on, and then he had the World All Access badge. You're never supposed to say that because people can forge it.
Oh yeah, they Photoshop it and then get in.
Yeah.
Don't do that, by the way. Don't do that.
By the way,
that sucks.
I just got to say, I love the people in esports who literally will be like, well, here's my boarding card from the flight I'm on in 3 hours. It's like, you're just braver than I am. Mate. Like, there's so many things. You can think about a million things could go wrong with that. You'll never find out where I'm going. You'll find out when I get there. That's it. When I'm safe, you'll know that.
When I saw the lanyard, that's the first thing that just came to my mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this player fucked or screwed up.
They did fuck up, Loco. They did fuck up.
Sorry.
But yes, that was amusing. We should actually get Westrice in here, though. I think that's enough of that topic. Let's actually start talking about some of the changes in North America and also Worlds, of course, with our beautiful music. I feel like there should be a studio audience clapping right now. Move over.
We have to move over. I forgot. Yeah, come see him.
All right. Nice meeting you.
One of the OGs of the league. Nice to see you again, man.
Hey.
So, you've been watching a lot of Worlds, and we'll talk about Worlds in a minute, but I do think we should start by having conversations about North American League of Legends. Your favorite thing, especially player development, which is your job.
That's true. Yeah.
And how to make NA players better. So obviously the big announcements was the Players Association saying that they can stream matches on the tournament realm so that they can make money from their fans while playing custom
when they do the
games
in-houses
at low pings and in-houses.
The premise being, if people forgot that didn't see the last episode, obviously we discussed on the last episode, like how do you improve solo queue and stuff. And the problem is improving solo queue itself is harder because it's just where everyone can play for free. But the concept was, if pros do all the in-houses, it's sort of like being how they do Challenger in Korea, like it's just all the top pros playing each other. Do you think the premise works? Like, will this actually help?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely, like from a player's point of view, it's definitely useful because like one, it's lower ping. Two, all these people are trying. You're not gonna get any trolls in your games. Three, there is an opportunity cost before when you play solo queue. Or like when you scrim, because you can't stream scrims and stuff. You can't stream like just like tournament realm. But like now you can. So like now, instead of an opportunity cost, like you can have both. Like you can make money from it, and you can get the quality practice that all these players like wanted for so long.
So when having a system in place, like one of the complaints I said was that if all of these players are just playing solo queue in the tournament realm, then how do other players on the ladder doesn't that increase the divide between pro players and amateur players, because they're not going to be necessarily in these scrims? Is there going to be a system where the top 100 on the ladder get invited to the tournament realm as well in order to practice? Because otherwise I feel like all the pros will just play in houses and no one else will get a chance to develop.
Yeah, I think there's like a little difference, like kind of like a balance between the two. Like in solo queue, I think it's more, I guess, where you want to like practice like new champions, like duo queue with your friends. It's more not as serious, I guess. But like in those in-houses in the tournament realm, like you're not going to be trying new stuff. Like you're going to be like playing like you would on stage.
But my question is, how do you get amateur players in there so that they can play in that environment? Because if basically those pro players are just off on their own, then they never interact with the normal player base. So how do you get new players up to that level? Because they're just scrimming amongst themselves or practicing amongst themselves.
Yeah, that's true. I never actually thought about that. Like that's.
I'll give you a counterpoint. This would be my counterpoint. Is I think it would just become part of the stages of the development. So what would happen is you'd still go and recruit somebody who's at the top of solo queue. You go, maybe he has talent, but then before you make him on your team, you'd bring him into the in-houses. So we already have this in CS:GO. I saw Hai himself directly made the comparison. In CS:GO, we have a third-party version of this. It's where it's basically Faceit made their own little like in-house league essentially. It's called Faceit Pro League in CS:GO. And what happens is if you're a top pro, you can pretty much already get in. You can just apply and get in. But then what they do is they purposely let in the like upcoming hopefuls. So say there's someone who's doing the equivalent of tearing the ladder, or some guy appears out of nowhere and he's playing in some semi-pro team, but he's doing really well. They'll invite him to the equivalent of the in-house. It's not literally an in-house; it's just online in this scenario. And then the idea is that's another area you can kind of see is he legit? If he's not good there, he probably wouldn't even get picked up by a team. So to me, it could be like a bridge between the two. Like that's how you can get from solo queue to a pro
that's
team.
what I was saying. Like I think that they should give tournament realm accounts to the top X players on the ladder, because that would also incentivize.
It would be a clever way to make it. The path to pro would be
Yes.
get to the top, get your spot, get in the in-houses, then prove yourself, get on a pro team.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
I like that angle.
All these in-houses remind me of way back before like competitive ladder was a thing for video games. Like you would have in-houses for StarCraft 1, for Warcraft 3. Like people would just play in-houses because the ladder system was so bad, and that's how you had to improve. Once you were good enough and you knew someone, like you would join like some kind of a channel where you could apply to be in the in-houses, and you would get in the in-houses, and that's how you would improve. So it's a little bit like going back to our roots in terms of like how competitive video gaming used to be.
Because the reason why I think that angle works is because you already can't really just scout with your eyes anyway. Even if you watch the guy and he looks amazing in solo queue, you kind of want to know what he feels like to play with. Like, what would he be like as a teammate? Or if he's the jungler, you want to know how would your mid laner feel if you've played with this guy? Do they have any natural chemistry? So I feel like getting to actually test drive the guy that would work. Because I know in teams they tried to do trials, but you notice they don't do that with big names, because like Jensen isn't going to trial for Team Liquid, example. He's just going to join, isn't he? So I noticed like the trial system is kind of a bit shaky in League anyway. I don't feel like it's that effective.
So what is the trial system then? Because we have the LoL scouting grounds coming up in a couple weeks. I assume you're going to be part of that, right? So what are you looking for in terms of, when Worlds? It's actually the same day as Worlds, day after Worlds, right around the finals.
Right after.
Yeah, right after the finals. What are you looking for there? What are you hoping to find? Like, how do you use that?
So what we're looking for exactly is not necessarily like players with experience, obviously. So like just people that have a very good baseline, like mechanical skill, like people that are very capable of just completely outplaying their opponent in lane or something like that. Good decision making, very good mental communication, stuff like that. So not really, the perfect player, but like a young player that has a very high skill ceiling, and we feel like that player can be molded very easily to the player that we want him to be. So that's kind of what we're looking for in Scouting Grounds.
Has any big name player come out of Scouting Grounds yet? Has there any been like top pro? Blabber was in it?
Yeah.
Is that the most famous one?
I'm trying to think.
We picked up Blabber and Kumo and Diamond from Scouting Grounds.
Okay.
Okay.
West, there's also a lot of old pros coming back into the scouting ground system. I
Yeah.
heard like Mashme, Zig. What's your opinion on those pros coming back to the scouting grounds?
To be honest, I don't know why that was there in the first place, because like the purpose was to develop talent, and like we see these
discover people
players
you never
for a
seen,
long
like,
time,
yeah.
and like we already know how these players are, so I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of scouting grounds. Maybe there's a reason behind it, I just don't know of it, but to me it just doesn't really make sense.
I would guess again, like if I had to try and play devil's advocate, I would guess their logic is because they're experienced players. Maybe it like makes the competition level harder at the scouting grounds, so it means that the newer player can kind of like get hype. Like, look, he's beaten up Mashme or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that sort of works. But I kind of agree. Like, I don't think the player himself, who's an old school name like that, I don't think they really should be being considered by any of the teams.
Well-
Like, you guys know them already. You could already trial those guys. together.
Exactly. That's the
don't
point.
need
Is
to
that
do that,
these
yeah.
guys already have the contact information of all
Exactly.
the teams, and if one of those guys was like, hey, I wasn't playing for a while, but now I'm top 10 on the server in solo queue again, and I like to try out. I think most teams would be like, oh, you've played 100 LCS games. We'll at least give you a tryout, right? They don't need scouting grounds to gain visibility.
Yeah.
Wait, they don't have tryouts. LCS teams, they rarely have tryouts, and because most of the players, like they play extremely grind heavy, like spring, summer, and then they go to Worlds, they want to break. Like I'd imagine most of your Cloud9 players are maybe summer in Korea, maybe summer on vacation. Like it is extremely hard to run a tryout, so I just don't think that's feasible right now in the current LCS system. Like giving older players a tryout or giving any new players a tryout other than like the scouting ground method.
No, that makes total sense. That's the reason why they're having to go through the scouting grounds. No one wants them, unfortunately.
So once
It's reality. I didn't make it.
Well, if you're not going to do tryouts, then I do think they should be allowed to go through scouting grounds. So.
So one thing that does happen in off season is maybe like a team will be like, okay, we are looking for newer players, so they'll fly in solo queue talent. Like TSM had their scouting ground, and I know other teams other than TSM also did mini tryouts between like spring and summer with a few academy players and a few of their LCS players. There's times it's done, but it's just so rarely done. Like trying out in League of Legends just is not a thing. And it's more of like your reputation and what you accomplished. And a lot of players, if their resume is from like 2 years ago, like 2 years ago, I used to be on Phoenix 1. Well, that's not even a team anymore. And we haven't seen you play in solo queue. Is pretty garbage and not a good measure of your skills. Like these players have nowhere to go to show that they can play again.
I mean, I think that's fair in this case. So,
By the way, to tie the 2 points together, to me, the logical place to have those players would be in the in-house instead. They're already a known player. Like, if Mashme wants to come back and people know him from the pro scene, you let him go into the in-house scenario. If he's too bad, you kick him out after a while. If he's terrible, if he's good enough, he can stay in the scene. That's how he done his rep. Like, he doesn't need the scouting grounds, does he?
I mean, the problem with this is I wish the system that would happen, because what I don't think is good is if Riot is dictating who gets access to the tournament realm. I think each team should be given like 10 tournament realm passes or accounts. And the teams can distribute them to players on the ladder as they see fit, just to start trialing players. This is something that you think you would do if you were going to look at up-and-coming talent, is get them into the in-houses, or just be like, I think this guy deserves a Cloud9 tournament realm account. Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it shouldn't be just limited to, academy and LCS players. I feel like it should kind of branch out, I guess, slowly towards like amateur players.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Like, you look at the ladder,
Like
and each team picks 10 players
I'll also
off the
say
ladder.
this. When I give the example from CSGO, we kind of have this. And like I said, they do let in people who aren't pros because they want to test if they're good. Another concept is, if you just happen to have someone who is like, they don't ever want to go pro, but they're really good at League of Legends and they just want to play seriously, you'd let that person in the in-house as well. Like, if they're good enough and they just don't want to go pro, they would help the environment. Like, they would be a good person to play with. So I think there'd be ways to get other talent in as well.
My other big question is, how long are these in-houses going to last? Because previously, for most in-houses, they start up, everyone's really dedicated, everyone wants to play, and then there's this like one person trolling, maybe the in-houses don't run as smoothly, maybe there's like a duo that's really hard to beat, and people get lazier, and the easy access is just being able to press like that play button on the solo queue ladder, even with 60 ping, is very...
Here's the problem to me. The major issue to me is like, again, this will show if the players themselves are legit. If these players who want to go to Worlds that all want to make the scene better, well, all you have to do is play the game. We're not making it hard for you. But if you can't be bothered to play the game, yeah, no one's going to force you to do it. You're right in that scenario, like, yeah, it's up to you if you don't want to play, if you don't want to do it.
There's like time slots, and if you don't get in the time slot, you get pushed to the next
I
one.
would say the bigger issue we had in CS when we ran a system like this was actually nothing to do with like people not playing. It was just drama between people. Like, oh, kick him out. He swore at me in the game or whatever. Oh, I hate him now. He's out my team. That's the bigger issue actually. Because then, then of course, then the real issue becomes who does kick people out of the in-houses and who decides it, and then it's someone corrupt or something, you know.
So there's actually two drama that I remember regarding past in-houses that I'll talk about. First one is Tarzan, the player that's currently in the EU solo queue ladder right now. He used to play in the NA in-houses, and then he yelled at X Special and someone because they were discussing their matchup afterwards. Like, he basically told them to shut up, and X Special was like, what the hell, like, stop being rude. And then he got mad, and then he did something else, and then he got kicked. So that was one instance.
Do we need a tribunal for these?
There's another instance. So there used to be a player called Fabi. He used to play for TL Academy, and Fabi would troll the in-houses, and he wouldn't play seriously. So Sven Skaren, whenever he was paired up with them, like, he got really fed up, and then Sven stopped like wanting to be paired with Fabi, and Sven stopped playing for a bit, and then like everyone's like, why isn't Sven playing? He's like, I don't want to be paired with Fabi, and then other people didn't want to be paired with Fabi, and then like that also put Fabi in like an awkward spot, and then he didn't want to play the in-houses anymore. So there's been drama with the in-houses before.
This is also why what I would personally do is like maybe you could involve like the whole like players association or something, so you'd have like some people who are leadership figures who could decide who should be, because obviously in that scenario there you'd just kick the Fabi guy out, wouldn't you? Like if you're not being serious or if you're just being rude. These are like good reasons to kick someone out of a practice environment, I think.
And as we know, Riot doesn't need good reasons to kick people out. So Westrice.
We've all been bad.
Nods awkwardly.
We've all been bad. We've all been bad.
All right, let's talk about Worlds, because I know that's what you were excited to talk about, John. So let's reverse engineer it a little bit and get to, let's start with the end. Who's winning Worlds?
Oh, okay.
Based
so
on the quarters.
I think if SKT beats G2, I think they'll take it all. If G2 beats SKT, then they'll take it all.
I agree with that.
I think it's either SKT or G2.
So basically, like the second semi-final here is like the real one. I agree. That's like the real final, isn't it? Like basically, by the way, that's the final everyone wanted before Worlds began. Like basically,
I'm kind of upset they're like in the same one, but
Sure.
Yeah, that was
whoever loses that match. I feel really sorry because they're probably the second best team at the tournament, but they're going to have third to fourth.
First and second best team right there, in my opinion.
If only we could have double elimination, but we can't have nice things. So instead, we get another great semifinal and another probably pretty bad world
one-sided finals.
World finals. So I think it's going to be SKT after what I saw from them. Even though I did coming into Worlds say I thought G2 was going to be the winner. I think SKT's really impressed me. So do you have? And again, I would say that this is not a confident prediction. Like I would say it's like 55-45 SKT. So G2, I think, obviously can win this best of five. What are your odds there? Who do you think has the best chance of winning?
SKT versus G2?
Yes.
Man, so I think it all starts with the drafts, because like it's really hard to actually outdraft G2 because of their
basically impossible
flexibility. Like especially just in the bot lane, like you cannot just like draft like that. But I think they are kind of exploitable in like the top side of the map, like Wonder and Yankos. I think if SKT like kind of like pretty much attack that area of G2, like Wonder and Yankos especially, then I think I'll give the odds to SKT maybe 60-40.
Okay, so pretty good.
I'll give you a crazy angle since you referenced the draft. Like when we did an episode, I'm trying to think, was it the one that we had when we had Wonder on, this and Loco? I think it was Wonder. One of the G2 members anyway made a reference where he was only half jokingly saying that like G2 actually had picks saved for Worlds that they hadn't used in LCS like finals even. Now normally when people say that, like the old thing of like saving strats was the thing in Counter, like he's saving strats, and that's just like a stupid fan thing. Like no one really does that, like you just try your best. And then if you get to the World Championship, then you try your best again. Like you don't save something, because what if you don't make it there, right?
Yeah.
The problem is G2, like you say, is the one team ever where with the amount of versatility they have, I could believe they might have still like a pick hidden that they did save for this. Because obviously it wouldn't be like a power pick that would win the whole tournament. It's the idea you'd have one where like no one would expect that draft or that lane. I feel like they could have something like that up their sleeve. That could be real.
I mean, going to the draft too, I think one of the things that really stood out to me in terms of this quarterfinal was that SKT was like doing really weird things in their draft, and it felt to me like this was one of the times where a team was almost playing for their next opponent.
I think they were saving as well.
Because like they were showing a bunch of really weird stuff, like Lucian top, obviously the Quinn top in that last game. They put in Monte for game 3 just so he could play his World Championship Thresh skin. Like there was a clear trolling that was happening there.
So the Monte thing is, from what I understand, the rule is you either play 1 playoff game or 2 group stage games. You have to play those to be able to get a skin.
That's how next level Korea is. They're now trying to help an extra player get a skin for all time's sake.
Okay, I didn't even know that.
Of the World Championship.
I just thought this was like a farewell to Monte game where it's like, we're up 2-0.
That's even
we're
better.
literally going to pick Thresh.
Yeah.
By the way, to put this in perspective, SKT has previously picked 4 skins in international events before.
Yes, Fnatic
they picked
famously,
all of Fnatic's skins at one point in time that they won at Worlds, and then
No, it was All Stars 2014.
Oh yeah, no, the skins Fnatic won at Worlds.
Yes, that's true.
At All Stars in 2014. They literally played a game against Fnatic where they
No, it was their own skins. They used the Season 3 skins.
Yes, you're right,
in Season 4. And the key thing is, it was when all the champs were out of meta, basically.
Yes.
I think like one of them was in the meta.
Yeah, there was terrible picks for the meta.
Like, because obviously they had like Jax and stuff like that, didn't they?
But the point is, and you might say, okay, well, many of these people have changed. Well, you know who was still there was Faker and Coma.
Yes.
So, like, Coma was there trolling for skins, and then we see, oh, of course they picked Thresh for Monte so he can play his Samsung White, like, World Championship skin in the one game he's going to play, and then they just clap them in game 4.
By the way, the story Monte told, the anecdote there of when in Season 4, basically the All-Stars tournament for that year was basically what MSI became. It was the same format, the best team of each region. And the reason that was a joke, and that's probably like Monty's favourite moment in League of Legends, is because at the time, because it wasn't literally MSI, SKT actually hadn't won Korea. It hadn't finished yet. So they actually got to qualify when they were in a slump. So in theory, they weren't the best team in the world. Then they played Fnatic, who was the best European team, picked their skins.
They were like the 7th best team in the world.
Picked their skins as a troll and still won the game, and then idiot Western fans were like, it was pretty close though. It's like, what more were they supposed to do to win like a perfect game or something? Like, that's why it's got to be one of your favourite moments.
SKT was probably like the 7th or 8th best team in Korea at that point.
They'd already lost to CJ, if you remember, in like the NLB or whatever, so they were already in a bad spot, So that just showed, that was like probably the largest the gap ever was, I think, because that was when if you can just troll versus the best Western team and still beat them, like, the gap was ridiculous at that point in time.
Yeah, so my point is that Coma actually just does have
I wouldn't put it past him,
of doing this, so it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Let's be real. Normally, no matter who your opponent is in the quarterfinals of Worlds, you're normally taken quite seriously. But like because of the whole group situation of how SPLYCE got here and SPLYCE themselves looked terrible, I do not believe SK Telecom really thought they could lose to SPLYCE in that series. Like that's one of the rare scenarios where I think someone could think I could mess around in the game and potentially lose it. Like you wouldn't do that versus a normal team because, you know, 1 game out of 5 is a big deal in the best of 5, but that's not that big a deal against SPLYCE.
They had a really strong identity in terms of what they wanted to do, and I think it was early game counter picks with a few good bridge pieces to make sure their comp just isn't
This is SKT,
garbage. Yeah, SKT, like Draven into Kai'Sa, Lucian into Gangplank, Lissandra into LeBlanc. All these are very well-known counter picks that help.
I like the Freudian slip that he calls it Gangplank because in the modern meta it absolutely is Gangplank, right? Just killing that under the tower.
But yeah, they picked a lot of counter picks and they just wanted to win lane. And they recognized SPLYCE had no mid game and there isn't going to be a late game if we're winning lane that heavily. As for the Quinn pick, the Quinn with Cleanse, that's actually a very common scrim pick. So if you notice, a lot of the Western teams playing against Korean teams such as G2 versus Dom1 Gaming, or whenever teams play SKT or Griffin, they will ban Quinn, the Korean team, and then the Western team will reply with a Renekton ban because apparently the Quinn with Cleanse is the only thing that can beat Renekton Elise and Renekton Talia.
Yeah, I totally bought that in the last game because I think they buckled down and were like, okay, we lost that 3rd game. We're just going to close it out now. But I pulled up some of the drafts here. Just in general, it just seemed like SKT. I'm not saying it was necessarily bad because the first game, I thought their comp was kind of fun. They knew the LeBlanc pick was going to come in for Humanoid, right? And they respond with the classic Lissandra, who will prevent LeBlanc from trading effectively on the W. So instead, though, they also have the teleport, obviously, with Lissandra, and they pick 2 AD carries. So they have a favorable matchup versus Gangplank with the Lucian, and they've got a lane dominant pick with the Draven as well, who they can snowball based on the adoration stacks, right? So in a way, like, Faker's fine in the mid lane. Faker can help out either side lane. They don't know where Faker's going. So if they snowball the Lucian or they snowball the Draven, they're gonna have a very strong late game.
So one thing really important about the Lucian into Gangplank, it's a really common matchup that Huni plays all the time, and Huni fails almost every single time he's played it. So a key point is Lucian will beat Gangplank like a little bit in lane, but one thing he has over Gangplank is wave control. As just a ranged champion, you can stack waves very easily. It's extremely important to constantly dive it, which is what SKT did, and why this is one of the only few times where Lucian into Gangplank or Lucian solo lane really worked out. Like Rookie played Lucian into KO and it didn't work out either. Like you need to build a significant lead and you need to dive it over and over again, because yes, you'll win a little bit in lane, but that's not enough to really justify the Lucian pick.
When Hooney was a boy, someone in his family, like many of our families, probably told him that old wisdom that goes like, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. His problem is he didn't realize, like, don't keep trying the same thing for your entire life.
I mean,
that's his approach.
You can't draft like this without like actually having a plan. Like SKT, they picked Lucian and then they had a clear plan, and I don't think SPLYCE was like thinking about it, but like Elise and Lissandra just like walked top for free pretty much. Because like if SPLYCE can't win 2v2 and they can't prevent Lissandra from just like pushing and just walking top like that, that's not a clear game plan. They just let their top laner die, pretty much. It's like that should be their game plan. It's like, oh, okay, Lucian to GP. GP should be able to win as long as he doesn't get dope, and then they just dope for free. There was no counterplay to it.
I mean, what I love about this draft though is like I said, I don't think SKT. I think they had a strong game plan, especially in game one here.
They did, yeah.
But I don't think they're going to play like this versus G2. I think they're playing weird stuff to make G2 really uncomfortable in the draft going into semis. I think they will have a completely different game plan going in versus G2. But even in like we're talking about the Lissandra, Elise, Lucian, you could definitely get the Lucian fed through dives with that amount of hard CC into the turret against the Gangplank. But also, let's just pretend top goes horribly wrong for some reason. Oh, we'll just cache some adoration stacks with the Thresh and Draven in the bottom side and get the Draven ahead. In a way, this allows you flexibility of pressure on the map that I thought was really well planned out.
Another thing is, if you go to game 2, so SKT drafted Fiora not as a counter pick into Poppy. They drafted Fiora and they just let Vizitachi take a counter pick. It's the same thing C9 actually did to Griffin, where if you have a weaker top laner who's not really great on carries and who can only play tanks, so Sword in C9's case versus Griffin, you can just draft Fiora and be like, what are you going to take into me? You don't play the counter matchups. You're not really that great of a carry player. And the same thing kind of happened, where you draft Fiora and the best thing SPLYCE could pick into it with Poppy. A tank matchup into Fiora is definitely not favorable at all.
By the way, just during Worlds itself, I've hated most of the Ezreal picks I've seen. They've done nothing in these games. So like,
And Kale too, except for the Shy.
How they thought they were going to get Kobe online, I don't get it. I never thought.
All right, why don't you like the way SPLYCE drafted?
Like the way SPLYCE drafted was so bad because you pick Ezreal and crap, what's that champion called?
Kai'Sa.
No. Ezreal and Pyke. Sorry. Okay. Brain fart. Yeah, so like you don't draft that without being able to like play topside, right? Like you pick that so that Pyke can roam, Ezreal can play safe, and then you know they blind pick Fiora. So like why don't you pick something that can like go head to head against it? Like not something to like negate its pressure, but something to like actually beat it later on, because you're gonna have the resources. Like your jungler is probably gonna be playing topside anyways. So like why not pick like Jax or something? You know, like Jax is actually pretty good into Fiora. Like most people don't think that, but like Poppy, out of all things, like I feel like Vizisachi should be able to play a carry in this game.
His carry is Cho'Gath.
Yeah, that's the problem with SPLYCE. They only play tanks, right?
And he's just himself very famous for sort of just preferring his champions over whatever the meta is, you know. So they kind of like opted out of the meta in a way, right? In fact, that's the problem with SPLYCE generally. Like, look at these drafts here. They're never, first of all, they're never just trying to win the draft. They've always got this logic of how they want to play and when in the game their spike's going to be, etc. So as a result, they end up with like, they get some champions that are good, but it's like the comp they put together is weird. Like, what is this game 2 comp here? Like, that's going to be like you're not going to win any lanes.
Yeah.
So you've lost all the lanes.
It's like they're really good at holding it, but they're never actually going to like, you know, press their advantage in any way.
Well,
Which makes sense for SPLYCE, but just not against SK Telecom.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cho'Gath wasn't banned this game either. We did see Vizichachi drawing some bans, you know, from the Cho'Gath throughout Worlds after he had that extremely good performance on it in the group stage. But for the most part, it was a lot of these top lane picks that could be carries for SPLYCE, like Renekton, Camille, they were banned out by SPLYCE itself. So I think they kind of limited themselves, kind of backed themselves into a corner.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious like what he prefers, like the kind of champions that he prefers. And I'm pretty sure SKT read that.
So I think the last one was, or the next game was kind of troll. Obviously, the Azir was a very strange
Oh yeah.
Strange selection.
I don't know. Yeah.
The Skarner.
SKT shouldn't have lost this game. I think, at one point they just gave up the Baron control for free, and then SPLYCE just walked in there for free, took all the control, and then they were forced to face check it, and then they just got engaged on. They pulled Baron, and they just got engaged on by SPLYCE. So like I think SKT made like one bad play, and SPLYCE made a very decisive play to like capitalize on the mistake, and that's how they won that game. But every other game, I felt like SKT just won pretty convincingly.
Also, one thing that's really weird was they first picked Renekton and they didn't pair it with Elise or Taliyah. Like, that's what makes Renekton so
Taliyah was banned, and so was Elise.
Oh, they rolled in?
By SPLYCE.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Wait, when did they ban it?
I mean, to be fair, Taliyah was banned in the second.
Oh, yeah,
version.
Taliyah was banned second phase.
You're right, so they could still have first picked.
Yeah, so they could have taken Taliyah earlier, but the whole point of Renekton is once you get above 50 rage and you flash stun, and Taliyah or Elise follows up, it's nearly guaranteed in professional play, and there's no champions that can really survive that. And also with Taliyah, you can invade level 1 to make sure you split the map. Like that's what Griffin did when they had Renekton Taliyah, and SKT just opted to not take Taliyah, and they took Skarner into Rek'Sai, which is very much a North American counter pick. We saw that a lot in North American finals and North American playoffs, so it was really weird. And also the Azir was out of nowhere too, like you guys talked about. So yeah, I do think SKT was kind of playing around with SPLYCE, and this is definitely not how they're going to be versus G2.
I mean, to be fair, earlier in the year, that was the main criticism of SKT coming in and winning MSI, wasn't it? It's like they emphasized the Azir for Faker. So for some reason, that's like Faker's version of being Visage Hachi, where it's like, no matter what, I just play Azir all the time. It's like it's not exactly the strong, like that was strong maybe like 2 months ago or something.
Look, I just think this is mind games. I think that if they sub in Mata and they use Azir Skarner and they win this game, then they have revealed absolutely nothing to G2. And if they lose this game, they just come in with a stronger, like a real style of composition, which is what we saw, clap them, and then move on to
and by the way,
semifinals.
I just want to say this. The plan for SKT doesn't quite work, because their plan on the one hand, like you said, was like get the skin for Mata as well. Like if we win Worlds, you know, like that's how next level these guys are. They're already like getting their boy like a +1 in the club for the after party before they've even played the semis. But the angle that I don't think they thought through is this. No, it's the other way around, boys. You made possibly the last professional game on an international stage Mata will ever play be him getting dumpstered by SPLYCE from Europe.
It wasn't his fault that they lost the game.
No, but that looks bad. Like, I don't. How did your career end up? Yeah,
I feel bad for him. I thought he did fine.
You're all right. You're all right. You're all right.
I mean, I thought he did fine. I just thought the comp was so wacky that it just, like, when you have, it's basically a lot of single target CCs with Skarner, Renekton, Thresh, these kind of pickups. And so maybe you can use the Azir to wall off reinforcements while you focus down somebody who's getting picked off. But there are very specific ways that this composition can work. And I just don't think it was ever going to be realistic in this meta, especially with the amount of late game picks. Once it went to late game, you've got Ornn forging items for people, you have Ryze and Kai'Sa. Like, how do you even live through this if you're SKT?
One thing I do want to talk about is why Mata isn't playing. So from how I understand it, it's Mata doesn't fit in with all the other pieces on the team, and this is a very common super team problem where you have so many great players that are used to getting a certain amount of resource, the game being played a certain way, the game being shot called a certain way. You want to continuously play that way, and I think there's contrasting styles between Mata and Teddy, and also Mata and Faker. It was actually a really big problem on KT, especially with Smep and Mata Deft, because both bot lane and top lane are very used to having the entire team play around them basically and being the primary carry. And on SKT, they try to make it work with Mata. And I don't think Effort necessarily is a way better player than Mata. He just fits in better, and he doesn't force the team to play the Mata style or my style of wanting to play. He just fits into what Faker wants to do. He just fits into what Teddy wants to do.
Right, okay, we spent a lot of time on the SK side. What about the other side of the bracket, the two Chinese team, IG, FPX? Who do you favor from this one?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think IG will win, but yeah. So like FPS like has this kind of play style where they actually play and move so fast around the map. Like they know exactly how much they can take with a pick. You know, they know exactly how much they can take, and you know they played this against Fnatic, so like it's kind of a hard read because Fnatic didn't play too well. But I don't think they can pull off the same strategy against IG. I don't think it will work against IG. So I do favor IG for this one.
Duncan, you watched a lot of LPL before, so I want to ask you on this. So usually the common theme is the best team in the region will dominate all the other lower teams. Like
Sure.
TL will dominate all the other lower teams. G2 dominates Fnatic, SPLYCE, you bring whoever you want. SKT dominates Griffin, most notably, everyone under them. Was the same thing true in LPL, where FPX dominated all the lower teams?
The big problem is this, like, first of all, on paper they did, like, they had one of the best splits ever. They went like 35-6 or something, some like outrageous win rate. That's incredible. Remember, they play best of threes in their region. The problem is, because the LPL season, there are so many teams in the league and it lasts so long. Like, literally, like, obviously IG had problems where Rookie was out for a while and they literally took out Ning. And then you had the scenario where Uzi wasn't even playing in the spring for the first like 3 or 4 weeks at least. So I don't think teams, unfortunately, treat like every big marquee matchup on the regular season like you do in LCS. Like back in the day, if CLG played TSM, even in the best of one, that was a big game. Like, you wanted to win just to prove that you were better, right? I don't think they care as much in the LPL regular season. So the problem is, it's only about playoffs. And then even in playoffs, most of these teams, IG, RNG, were pretty flawed this year. They kind of got it together right at the very end. Like, RNG got it together in the playoffs. Obviously, IG only got it together in the gauntlet. So coming into this Worlds, yeah, on paper, FPX should have been the really strong favourite from China. That's why I actually think what's killed all the FPX hype is just the way the group stage played out, because they got the easy group and they got teams that everyone thought they'd batter easily. So they basically needed to do what SKT did, look like really dominant and just like, we're going to be unbeatable, because now people, feel like maybe the regular season of LPL doesn't matter, or maybe it's too long ago, or maybe they're just not the same team internationally.
And IG was lucky to make it to Worlds too, because they had to win 2 Game 5s in the gauntlet as well. So they barely got there, but I think that they've shown incredible development, and having Ning back also has been huge. And my takeaway from watching IG is that these guys are just so individually skilled and like so good at skirmishing. Like, their concept of team fighting and like how to win team fights, especially when they start to like surround you and choke you out, like poke you with LeBlanc W's, is just incredible to watch. And also, Jackie Love should not get Kai'Sa anymore. That guy, he activates off that poke damage and just destroys your team if he gets in there with a Kai'Sa ult.
What they have in IG, and this is the funny thing about the fact that them and G2 were the 2 teams originally at MSI that everyone was hyping, is they both have a strength that is so unique to the modern day of League of Legends, because obviously in the Korean system back in the day it would never make sense, which is when you win the small skirmish where you get the first kill and then the other team basically turns tail and runs and gives up the skirmish, you just keep chasing them and get all the kills after. You run all the kills down. Like, in the Korean way in the past, it's like if I'm slightly far enough away and I die, you sort of let me leave, because then you just go and get an objective or something. In this world, like IG, they just keep chasing you. G2 does it as well. Like, it makes it so that as a result, though, you have this fear to even start a skirmish, because you don't know if you're just going to get drawn into the ultimate. Like, it's like those old cartoon fights where it's just like a dust cloud and people are getting dragged in and there's just fists coming out. And it's like you just get dragged into the IG-G2 chaos, the tornado. You know, it's kind of like what it feels like.
So the weird thing for me for IG is I actually think they have really bad coordination, and they're all very, very individually skilled. Every single member on their team, especially the carries, Jackie, Lub, Rookie, and the Shy, are so great at creating space for each other in team fights, but they don't purposely do it to create space so Jackie Love can go in. They do it, they're like, oh, this person's out of position, I know how to punish them, I'm gonna do this. Like, Rookie gets like a beautiful open on Kiana, like the Shy gets a really good flank angle as the kill on the Xayah. Like, they do really good stuff individually in team fights, and they have such good individual players, it ends up working out.
Here's my analogy for you. So, because it looks like they're team working, all they're doing basically is like what an improv class does, is like you say a concept, and I don't even know what you said, I just go, yeah, and then here's the next thing we do. And you go, yeah, and then we do this. It's like, hopefully at the end it just seems entertaining and it worked. Like, did it work? Did we win? Yeah, that was all planned. Because obviously the joke is at the end, like my dream basically would be if we didn't know anything about IG, we knew nothing about the players and stuff, and then you'd have someone like Jack do one of his team fight breakdowns, because obviously you'd be looking at like, this is genius, how did they know to draw this guy in? And then this guy knew 1 second later, it's like they didn't know any of that, mate, actually, they just do whatever they want, like, this is all, it'd be good if they did know all that, mate, but actually this is just happening. I'll say this, the angle for me is, the reason why, because by the way, I'm going to pick IG to win that match as well. And I actually think that the fact that I'm going to pick IG to go to the final of Worlds and beat the #1 team from their region that has like a whole cohesive style just shows the way League of Legends is right now. Because IG is, if you're talking about teams, like the way you play, your style, they're not even a top 5 team in this tournament for me. But the player strength is so absurd. And like we're saying, a lot of the almost coincidental aspects of how they're able to play together. In this meta, you can beat a real team. If you have, because the point is, it's not that I just have a better top. I have the Shy as my top. I don't just have a slightly better mid. I have Rookie. If that, so if we all know, if you really in the modern meta had like Faker and Uzi and then a bunch of bad players, you probably still could win if you had the right style, you know?
I also think, like, if we look at this, so one of the things that really has stood out to me about Worlds is the Kayle priority. Because sometimes I feel like in certain tournaments in League of Legends, like, you have, like, this really high priority pick that people know is good in theory, but the execution is, like, so garbage
pick
a lot of
I
the
think
time.
Kayle is going to have a much lower priority in the IG versus FPX game.
Really?
Very-
Because
very-
I think why I'm curious because like the Shy has been like by far
He was the
like
best,
the most
sure.
legit Kayle I've
course.
seen this
Yeah.
entire tournament. Like losing lane and then coming back and dumpstering people, and I think he's like been the level of his Kayle is so much higher than anyone else's. So why don't you think it's going to be important?
So it's because of FPX specifically. They're actually really good in the early game. Like they're level 1s. Like watching them, level 1 is actually pretty good. So they know how to punish a weak early game.
Wait,
Like-
they lost every single level 1 versus Fnatic. They
To be
either
fair,
got
that's
first blooded
Fnatic's
or
strength.
4 buffs.
though. That
I
is
know,
Fnatic's
but like
strength.
you know, they always have like a game plan. Like you know, they didn't get the blue buff, right? But you know, they still have a good game plan. Like it almost worked, you know. But just in general, their early game just it feels good, you know. Like IG, if they're able to get their Kayle, I mean, I don't think Kale's gonna be like you know first pick or anything, but they can still pick it, right? But if they do pick Kayle, they need to be able to make it so that Kayle can make it past mid game. Because I know FPX is really good at capitalizing on champions with no priority.
I also feel like a problem for me in this series is like one of the reasons why FPX is the best team from China is they're the team that look almost.
They know
like,
how to accelerate the
They're
game.
almost built literally to destroy RNG. Like if you have like a good bot lane, they know how to shut that down, how to get to it early, etc. Like against IG, they're still like the outlier team in the region. They play through the solos, so. And not only that, they don't. This is the reason why we'll get to this discussion later. But in my opinion, half the reason why Naguri from Damwon is getting so much criticism is just because the Shy is also Korean, playing for a way less organized team, playing the same picks, and he's just outshining him in every regard. So the problem is when you see the Shy not even get 24/7 resources and still dominate the whole game, it makes you realize like it's not unlike Damwon where you could say, well, they're going to put everything through top and it's going to be Showmaker and Naguri have to take over. Like the Shy doesn't even have to do any of this stuff and they can still win the game. So I don't know how you shut them down, basically, because in theory, they've already shut themselves down. They don't have a real team. They're still winning.
So we're going to talk about it more in the Dom 1 versus G2 matchup, but one thing I do want to mention about Kayle, and there's another pick that goes really well with it, Kai'Sa. So if you play a card game or any kind of card game, there's something called a bomb. It's something you use later on that costs a lot of mana and that will basically win you the game. And yeah, it is one of your win conditions. So Kai'Sa, Kayle, when both of them are level 16, and they have 3 items, there's a team fighting maneuver you can do where Kayle preemptively ults to Kai'Sa once Kai'Sa has a plasma marked on someone in the team fight, and Kai'Sa goes in with the Kayle ult. She's invulnerable. There's going to be giant AoE damage falling around her. Like Kayle ult does tons of damage late game. Like it's doing up to like 800, 700 AoE damage, and it is impossible to team fight against. So IG ran it a lot with Jackie Love and the Shy, and Damwon also ran it a lot with Naguri and Nuclear.
Yes.
So it's something that teams are going to have to watch out for, and it's not beatable late game in a team fight, and you have to not team fight versus it. You either have to pick it, or you either have to make sure it doesn't get to scale.
I noticed that
Well, you can
Damwon
force the
also,
Kayle ult out.
One of the other ways Damwon I noticed used it is they would use it with Leona and just put it on the Leona when Leona went in. So then if everyone wasted their time dumping in on that trying to kill the support, you just didn't get anything for like 5 seconds. So and it's more like the pick that you pair with the kill. That's the concept to me. I think some teams have been doing the classic Western move where you think that the pick's good. So you go like, hey, I've got the pick. It's like, but do you know what you're going to do with that? It's like, no. It's like, you don't just win lane with it. So what's the point? You know, like.
So what in IG FunPlus Phoenix as a coach, if you were coming into this, what would be your priority picks for each team, like in terms of the draft? So we'll see if you think the same way as their coaches do this weekend.
Let's see. I think they're gonna try to, for the Shy at least. I think they should really be kind of helping the Shy just kind of like take over, because I just think he's much better than Gimgoon. I think they just kind of draft towards topside and just pretty much a strong early game. I mean, I don't think Kayle is necessarily bad either. It's just hopefully they have like a game plan around it if they do decide to pick it. Because FPX is just really good at punishing the early game. Like, did you see what he did to like, Beepo, Like Beepo like kind of played it okay, but like he got so hard punished for just being on that champion in general. Like it wasn't even the player, it was just the champion. So it's just, I mean, like, I don't really know what they're gonna pick because hopefully we don't see like the same stuff like the game 3 versus SPLYCE.
From SKT?
No, I'm sorry. Not,
Yeah.
But
We won't see that, I'm pretty sure.
hopefully they
From
have
anybody.
something new prepared, you know, like something that I haven't seen before, just kind of like surprise us.
The fact that it's 2 teams from the same region makes that even more likely, I feel like, because then it's all the mind games of what they would think you'd pick. So I think the fact that it's 2 Chinese teams makes it more likely they'll have a weird draft at some point.
Like they have to like surprise us in a way, and like if we expect them to pick like, you know, certain champions, like, and they pick everything that we already know of, then like the opposing team is just gonna know exactly what to do against it. And I don't think Kale is gonna be a high priority in that series.
So
Just my opinion.
My big problem is this. I know actually there's a decent split on that particular series, and I've seen some people picking FPX. All I would say to the people who pick FPX is, who's carrying those games? Answer me that. Who's carrying those games?
TN probably.
Like, they
would be
think
my
as a team they could beat. I agree, but who's going to carry individually? Like, that's a tough one.
to answer Monte's question regarding the champion, that's going to be really important. I think for FPX, Rides was such an effective pick, and I think it's Doinby's best champion by far. And to go on Westrice's point regarding how FPX is able to snowball so hard, is they'll run 1-3-1, and they'll force people to come mid.
Yep.
And once people are mid, Rides ult, take 3 people, go to the one side where Gimgun was, and then dive that person and bust that turret.
Yeah, you
open.
can't really.
I'm going to be mad if we see Rise from FPX again. Like, the
You
fact
need to
that they just gave it away all the time in that series was
Yeah.
unreal.
Like some teams would be like, oh, Rise, okay, we have some counter picks into it, but it's not gonna work. Like you saw them pick like Casio into his Rise, right? Like what they did was they just accelerated the game and just got the Rise out of the lane phase. Like he went to the side lane, got blue buff, and then that's it.
So in competitive play, there's a lot of things you can do to mask like Rise's weak laning phase. Honestly, it's not that weak. So Rise, if he wants to, if he spends all his mana, he can clear the wave extremely quickly and then move on and then maybe take a free recall or roam with your jungler. And another thing that's really powerful about Rise that doesn't really get shown in solo queue is the jungle gank coordination. He's one of the few champions left in the meta with a guaranteed root. So if you have good coordination with your jungle, and your jungle is a really good player, which TN is and which Doinby is, that coordination in the 2v2, that threat is just so much, and it's really hard for mid lanes to play versus it.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna be expecting to play Rise at all. Maybe the 4th or 5th game when something has to be banned, but I'm pretty sure they have something prepared.
Dude, how crazy was it that Fnatic didn't ban Rise at all?
I know. I don't know, dude.
Funny thing is, actually, the Champion Rise was one of my first introductions to some of the flaws of how League of Legends, the game's designed. Because what happened was I saw someone playing it, and then, I was playing in a game with someone, and we were playing against a Rise, right? And I was like, oh, what does that champion do? And then I saw it did the route, right? And I was like, oh, how do you dodge that? And they were like, well, you can't dodge. I was like, no, but what's the counterplay? And he goes, just don't be near him. And I go, so I have to, for the rest of the game, I just can't be near that champion. And he goes, yeah. And I go, right, what does his ult do? And you can imagine it's like, so, you can just get next to me anytime. I was like, this is the stupidest game ever. Who designed this? Like, so just ban it. That's the solution.
Lane versus him? Oh no, you
Exactly.
lose that too, sorry.
And then obviously the joke is in this game, he's told me that, well, just stay away from him. And it's like, the Rise already has like 2 kills more than us. So you can imagine it's like one of those cartoons where you're running and no matter where you run from, you close the door, he's just behind you waiting there like, he's here already. It's like, you're getting on a plane, he's just waiting for you there. Like.
His weakness is supposed to be he's shorter range and he's supposed to be squishy, but his rotations are so strong and he scales off of mana, so you don't even have to go a squishy build. So the normal build is you go Rod of Aegis, you go Tear into Seraph, and then you can also build Rallies on top of that. You can build Righteous Glory, you can build Banshees, and you're still doing massive amounts of damage, like long if you can stay alive and do rotation. So I think the item builds really take Rise out of like, hey, this is supposed to be a squishy champion. Nope, he can build Ninja Tabi Righteous Glory versus armor teams. He can build Merc Banshee versus AP teams, and you're not really squishy at all. So I think there's a flaw in the how Rise scales off of item that's really covering up what his supposed weakness is supposed to be.
It's actually memorable to me of when you had Echo as a top laner and you could just build tank but add damage as well already in the base kit. Like, it's an example of like a flaw where the problem is you designed it for one thing and it can be used for the other.
No, so some of our champions are like 5 years old or up to even 10 years old now, right? And the item systems can be very current. Like they can be from 6 months old to a year old or maybe even 2 years old, but they're not designed parallel. Like it's not parallel design. Like it's pieces you're fitting together.
Obviously, yes.
So there's broken results that you can get.
All right. Well, we gotta wrap this up because we have Damonte on the show too. Thank you very much for coming, Westrice. You're C9 Westrice on Twitter, right?
Yep.
Any other
C9
place
Westrice.
people can find you on the interwebs?
Your stream.
My stream, yeah. My my Instagram is more personal. My Twitter is more, business side. So, yeah, just
What's your
C9
stream?
C9 Westrice.
Street?
My stream is Westrice,
Just regular Westrice.
without the C9. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much
I
for.
couldn't get the Westrice handle. Someone took it.
That's right. You should
yeah.
get your social media team on that. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We're going to have Damonte from Clutch Gaming / Dignitas, depending on which iteration of that team you want to call it these days. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, we do have Cloud9's Brain Check. See you in a couple.
Thanks, guys.
Guys, let's ban Yumi. I don't want to play against Garen Yumi. I won't let us lose.
Okay, just give me Yasuo.
Okay then. Okay. I feel like the Cho'Gath gonna fucking one-shot you. Beat him up.
Can commit on it a bit.
Yeah, but it's time to have some fun.
Until you get PPA and pass.
It's time to have some fun.
Fight down here.
Yeah. Ah, fuck, I didn't go to the bathroom, guys.
Labra, you promised Niski Yasuo a win.
Yeah,
made a
Labra, you
really
told me
big
you're gonna
promise.
carry anyways.
But I mean, we gotta win this fast then, so I can
But
This
just
is a
dive.
pretty
Let's
big
look,
wave.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I stopped. They're recalling.
He should die here, he should die.
Oh, nice.
Nice,
Not actually
Niski.
getting
Let's go
it.
stop the drug.
Yeah, let's go.
I don't have a ward, so it's someone else.
These guys look to steal.
Yo, can we turn on right side?
I'm TPing behind. Got it. Kill Lee.
I should be
They're
dead.
TPing here, they're TPing here. Okay,
Yeah.
just leave. No, let's hit it. Let's hit it.
Okay.
There's a ward right here. Oh, we're fighting.
Coming.
Okay, that's Rush Box. Yeah. Look at this.
I have ult, but
Just kill these guys. Kill these guys.
I'm ulting
Rise,
me.
look at Rise.
Okay, I'm looking ult. I got
Yeah.
ult on the back line.
Yeah, I'm on Rise.
Rise dead.
Yeah,
Push
kill Joe. Flash on
I'm
him, nice.
dead here, maybe.
We're fine.
We can fight.
Yeah,
I'm 1 HP, guys.
I'm
It's
1
on you guys.
HP. Thresh looking at me a bit.
I'm fine.
I'm walking out. Thresh here. Watch out.
Yeah, nice.
We can fight still.
I'm really low.
Alright,
Cannot fight.
I'm going top. I'm going top.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Shogun is
I'm
moving.
looking. He's dead.
I have ult on him. He's dead.
He's dead.
Shogun's gonna be mid. Shogun's gonna
Yeah,
be mid.
we're good. Yeah.
We can dive mid if we see Lee.
Can they send Cho here or something?
Yeah,
3?
they can.
Okay.
I think you make him show.
Cho top.
Don't see Rise mid.
Yeah.
Look at mid tower. Look at mid tower.
Yeah,
we're hitting it.
No, they're mid. Kill him. Kill the tower. Kill him.
Okay.
There's 2 mid. It's only 2 bot. I
Yeah.
think you're safe.
We're on him.
Guys, careful.
Rise can
careful.
ulti,
They're
Rise can
rotating.
It's fine. It's fine.
Can you guys get out?
He's
There's
dead.
gonna be
Oh,
3.
wait. Okay, he's not dead.
I'm running up.
We're trying to come.
Yeah.
Can we Kai'Sa ult?
I'm okay here.
Any CC?
Yeah, I need plasma.
I'm fine.
I don't have anything.
Okay. No, this is fine.
That's it.
Let's back out together.
So fucking good.
Yeah,
guys.
that was good.
Want the wolves.
Fucking noobs.
Oh,
They're
going
going
down
I think we
mid. I
have to
have
fight
flash
mid
in
here.
5.
Okay. I have W in 3, 2, 1.
Wait for the side.
Wing.
Okay, I'm looking.
Okay. Yo, look here. Nope, nothing.
Oh, they
Okay,
got
they
ult.
hooked.
I'm okay. No flash, Lee, no flash.
I have Jinx ulted.
Yeah.
Jinx ulted. He's Zonya's. Look.
Yeah,
I'm just on Thresh right now.
I'm on Cho here.
I have
Nice.
flick on him. Kill Cho.
Lee.
Cho's
Nice.
super
I'm
straight.
on
I'm on Jax.
I'm
I
on
have
it.
Rise.
Rise dead. Yeah, end the game. End the game.
Push
End the
down
game.
mid. Yeah, we have.
No, I'm minion.
No. We have.
Guys, am I gonna get a win?
You're gonna.
It's
you're gonna get-
unbelievable.
Is this what I
Please,
grieve and I
guys,
kill
please.
myself?
Please don't throw the game.
We can do it, right? We don't lose the towers, right?
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
Okay, let's end this one, guys.
Guys, I have to ruin my
Oh,
KD.
fuck.
Blabber, what the fuck, dude?
Guys, I have to ruin my KD. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
we have to kill him.
Please,
Guys,
please,
I'm sorry.
please. I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose. Yes.
There we go. Cloud Connections, presented by AT&T, is upon us. Our guest for this one is Damonte from Clutch Gaming / Dignitas. Do you call it Clutch still?
I mean, might as well be Dignitas now.
Sure.
I think Clutch is pretty much dead now, officially, since we lost
In
our
all
Worlds.
ways.
So. Yes, actually.
Exactly. We've put an end to that chapter, though. It was still cool to get to go to Worlds, though. That must have come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, that's what I said in a lot of interviews I did. It was, this was Clutch's last run. It was 2019, and the fact that we got to go to Worlds was pretty sick.
Sure. Because if people don't remember, like, I feel like that storyline got buried completely. People spent the whole summer saying the third team would be CLG.
Or TSM.
Or TSM, obviously, yeah, they're the two obvious ones. So people forget, like, it's not even like you guys with the old school method just won only in a gauntlet. Like, the amount of best of fives you were playing towards the end, you won a lot of best of fives against big teams.
Yeah, do you remember there's like a car segment that the LCS did? And
You guys didn't get a car?
Yeah, we literally did not get a car because they were like, no one thought we could make it to playoffs even. And they gave like 100 Thieves a car when 100 Thieves were just pretty trash, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And then they gave us like a monster truck with Lyra in it, and that was by the time we already made playoffs. It was pretty funny.
Obviously, TSM's car should have been a Dodge because they dodged Worlds. And they did get charged quite a lot for that. So. Anyway, whatever.
Very good, very good.
It was all right. There's no follow-up to that. We should actually talk, by the way, at some point, since obviously with Westrice, like, to discuss who we thought was going to win the final, we ended up going down the rabbit hole of, like, both the semis and then the quarter that the SK played. But we actually haven't discussed any of the other quarters results, really. A little bit about FPX Fnatic, so should we dive into some of that?
Yeah. That's I was doing it sort of backwards with Westrice, but we can do it forwards with you.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
talk about the matches that have happened and how that's going to affect the future.
Okay.
What do you think
Right?
would be a fun first series to do? I think, dude,
Do you want to touch on the SKT Splyce stuff?
Yeah, do you have
again?
any thoughts on that?
Do you have any thoughts on the trolling with Monte for his world skin?
Um,
So we're also curious because you were there and scrimming a lot of these.
Yeah,
teams.
yeah,
So
You also played SK Telecom.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear about any kind of inside knowledge you have of these teams because obviously the hype was before quarterfinals. Apparently everyone was saying, "Oh, Damwon, so good, best teams in scrim, scrim bucks galore,
Put it this way,
scrim god millionaire."
Taking into account things you know from scrims and then games you played, like who is your favorite to win the tournament right now?
I actually think IG are going to win Worlds. I think we scrimmed, I believe, every single team except FunPlus that is left, and IG seemed like they were on like a different level. And I mean, do you want me to touch on this SKT game or
just who do you think?
Sorry.
Well, we can talk about your scrim
Oh,
insider knowledge in a bit. So let's talk about SKT versus SPLYCE first, because obviously some really weird drafts this game with like the Lissandra, not bad, just unusual for this tournament.
Yeah, I feel like SKT was just being really cocky with how they draft. It seemed really, it wasn't. This is definitely not how they're gonna play in their next series and the series after that for sure, because they were just doing a lot of stuff, and also I think Faker was actually playing pretty poorly. I think he was getting caught a lot, and it just seemed weird to watch these games. Like they weren't trying their hardest for sure.
It might be Korean excuses, but his skin was flaring up a lot more than normal, so a lot of people made comments about he's not in his best form in terms of like health-wise.
No, but the
That
thing
is like a very Korean insight.
If you hadn't said the first part, if you just said he wasn't in great health, you know, I would think, oh, maybe he's ill. He might have think. The fact that you were like, oh, your skin looks terrible right now, Faker. Your complexion, like you've got a lot of
my comments. I'm telling you
puffiness
what
in
the
your
community
cheeks,
comments
and
are.
you could tell by the way his eyeliner, like he couldn't cover with the mascara, like you could tell he was hurting inside. So like, man alive, how deep are we going with this? Like enhance. Oh, the foundation is off by 2 shades. Obviously he's flush cheeks. How deep are you going in it?
I'm just giving insight on what the Korean community said.
Thank you. He's like the sideline reporter. And over here in Korea, we're going hip about all this, you know, what they're wearing, the clothes.
Anyway, I don't think he was terrible in this series by any means. I think
he just underestimated his opponents.
Look, he played Azir, and he didn't look great on Azir, but Azir's kind of not great right now, right? And I think that a lot of what he was doing, like when he's playing the Lissandra, he's really just playing the side lanes to get them ahead. He doesn't have to be amazing in lane. His job is push wave, catch LeBlanc if she W's in, and then walk top or bot and feed Khan. Like, he was just doing his job. He wasn't expected to be an insane carry in this series, right?
Yeah, I think actually that's what you've seen out of Faker this entire Worlds, is that he's just been doing his job exceptionally well. He's not really doing anything over the top or, you know, making some superstar play. There's for sure been times where he's made amazing plays, but even when you go back to like the Tristana games in group stage, and I believe he played a Tristana game in one of these as well.
Yes, he did.
And he just does his job. He doesn't.
He's there to apply pressure on turrets. Like,
yeah, he doesn't even. You could probably see, like, go look at the CS numbers and you're like, wow, Faker's losing lane, but it doesn't really matter because he's not giving up anything and he's just going to side lane and pressuring the game.
But people are just so used to Faker carrying. When Faker just does his job and he's a really good supportive piece, people are like, oh man, Faker's not like being Faker. But he doesn't need to be Faker anymore. He doesn't need to be that Season 3 Faker. He has Teddy, he has Khan. Khan was exceptional this series.
I also think it just doesn't even fit in the modern day anyway. Like, if you look at G2, it's like a superstar team where everyone's amazing. Like, the idea of having, like, the one carry that you load everything into, that's kind of like an outdated idea at this point in time in League.
And we saw what happened to RNG. They had that identity.
Well, I think also one of the big talking points is what is the meta in this Worlds? Because 2 of the teams that we have in semifinals, G2 and FunPlus Phoenix, play a style, and especially G2 was definitely pivoting to this style coming out of the mid lane with Caps, which I think I was reading like a Jats tweet, I think, where he said it was something like Caps was in lane 22% of the time in the early game. And so Doinby obviously comes in with this really good reputation as a roamer, and then Caps is in the mid lane playing Yasuo and is all over the map. And Faker also is playing Lissandra, which is to help the side lanes or playing Ryze, which does have that mobility to be in the side lanes. So I think the question we have to ask is it really just like more of a mid-supporting ganks with supports or junglers into top and bottom side to feed your carry top or to feed your Kai'Sa or whatever you have, right? Is that just going to be the preferable style for this World Championship? Because already half the teams are playing that style, and obviously arguably SKT is as well.
You definitely get a lot of roams top. Like that, you see that tons of times when the waves clearly just goes through the brush and then goes behind the lane, basically.
Wow. One thing I have a great idea on how to describe the meta. Thorin, what's that game where you can? It's like football, but you run forward, but you can only pass backward.
Rugby?
Rugby,
Yeah.
like in that game.
Listen, I know his mind. That's all you need to know. Like, yeah, well done. Yeah.
In that game,
That was a good description.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
it's not like traditional football where there's like offense and defense.
Yes.
Like the goal of the game is to always stay on offense and make sure you can.
Yes,
score,
you want
right?
possession with the ball, exactly. Yeah.
It's very similar to how the meta is right now. You always want to make sure you're ahead on priority. You're resetting first. Like no one's making big mistakes where you're losing so much in tempo and you have to reset at a bad time, or someone gets ganked or picked off at a bad time and you have to give up vision. Like it's really bad to not reset as 5. Like it's exactly like that game. You always want to be walking forward. You always want to be staying aggressive. And if you need to pivot a little and give the ball back to someone and just slow down a little, but still make sure you're staying on the offense, do that instead of like dying, instead of getting picked.
I think kind of what you're saying is that no players, especially on the good teams, are being greedy right now. And no one is playing for themselves. They're only playing like to make their team get ahead. And especially the mid laners, no one is actually playing to win their lane. Everyone is actually just playing to get push and go to the side lane instantly. And I think that's why I heard you guys talk about Ryze a bit earlier. And I think a big reason why Ryze is so strong is because his E bounces on every single minion now. And that means you can just get pushed no matter what. Yeah. And even when you get counterpicked by like Cassiopeia or something, and they're like gonna win the lane versus you, if you play well, as soon as you get level 5, all you do is press EQ twice, and you're gonna clear the wave.
Exactly.
Just watch FPX versus Fnatic for a demonstration of that exact maneuver. over and over again to oblivion.
You just said you didn't play against FunPlus Phoenix that much, but even you, as
he said of the teams that he didn't practice, like that implies, but I think he said it was only FPX he didn't play, so we can ask him about the others after as well.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just curious because since you didn't play them, so you're not playing any kind of insider baseball here. Do you agree with the pretty, I think, overwhelming public sentiment that why are you giving Donby Ryze every single game of this series effectively, and that is such a power pick for this guy? Like what was going on with the Fnatic draft?
Yeah, I think
because they weren't even prioritizing it. Like sometimes it would fall into like this after the second round of bans, and it's like you literally could have just taken this away from him.
Yeah, I think it was pretty weird for me because the entire Worlds, every team has been prioritizing Ryze like relatively high, and even I think FunPlus was one of the only teams playing Ryze before Worlds started. And Donby was like already before Worlds started, he was known for his Ryze and this really interesting build where he went Rylai's and
Righteous Glory, I see.
Righteous Glory, yeah. And he's the one who popularized this months before it became good. I think not good, but like before it became popular. And it was surprising to see. And I think, I mean, I'm sure Fnatic like thought they had counters against it, and it just didn't seem to do anything because Donby just was such a monster.
The real problem is, I agree with what you said at the end there. Thinking about the way Fnatic especially drafts and what they want their champions, that actually implies they just thought they could deal with it, and they almost wanted Ryze to be picked, and then they were going to deal with it. Like, they knew that he's going to want it, he's going to pick it, therefore here's our plan. Well, guess what? You didn't have a plan whatsoever. Or maybe you had a plan against, like, some garbage mid laner in the EU, but you didn't have a plan for Donby, that's for sure.
You know how you described G2 as jazz music before? Like how they
Monte,
improvise, they improvise.
It's a good premise,
and then they let things flow. Fnatic is a piano artist that can only play from sheet music, and they only know the music in theory, and they can't improvise at all. When they have their set plan and everything goes according to their set plan, they're great.
Exactly.
And they know how to copy G2's way of snowballing.
Yes.
But when things go wary, Fnatic falls apart so easily.
That's why actually the one thing that I look back on now, because really the problem is when you make your prediction, you do think there's reasons the other team can win. You just discount them and say, I don't think they're as important. When I look back now, the one angle that I was so mistaken on in picking Fnatic to win this series is that is probably the only team in the tournament who is going to get the early game lead on Fnatic. Like that was Fnatic's whole MO, is like, we'll always get the first blood and we'll get the start of the game going. It's like, actually that's the one team that kind of their specialty was to do that themselves.
So they did that. Fnatic did get the first blood in a lot of their games, and they had a really great start. There was a game where Brox got he got 4 buffs on the enemy jungler, but they had no idea how to execute their early game beyond that. Bwipo was on Rengar, he first blooded Camille, and Broxa never ganked it once as Elise, and he's playing for bot side, which is a Garen Yuumi, and Nemesis TF, which is known to roam, like just didn't roam at all, and their draft was also really weird. A key point in playing TF is you have a really strong support and a really good jungler you can play off of, and the 3v3 mid is disgusting with Flash Gold card, but when you have a Yuumi, like Yuumi can't roam around, so I don't know, Fnatic just did not look like the Fnatic like we expected them to be.
Well, or they reverted back to the Fnatic we expected them to be. I mean, arguably, they overperformed in that second round robin, right, to even make it out of that group in the first place. So.
Yeah, the real problem is everyone just bought super into that second week, which is really just one day of play. Which, yeah, they had a great day. Like, they beat SK Telecom. That's legit as hell. But
They beat Clutch Gaming, too.
A lot of
They
people
barely beat Clutch Gaming.
I'm sorry, you were a bit overmatched in that group, it turns out, unfortunately. That was pretty unlucky for you guys to get that group draw. So you had the experience, right? So what was your take on Fnatic? Obviously, looking pretty dicey in that first round robin and then coming in and going on that win streak in order to make it through.
Yeah, I was really surprised that they ended up going 4-0 in that second day because we played them really early on in the day and it was just the biggest Fiesta game ever. And after that game, we were like, okay, you know, we're kind of doomed, but at least we like put a good like game on against Fnatic. And then we just proceeded to watch them like absolutely dump on SKT and then have a really close game versus RNG. And then just randomly they were just second seed and we were like, wow, like maybe Fnatic is actually insane. Because I also, like Thorin put Fnatic winning against FunPlus because, you know, I thought they showed so much good stuff on the second day. And FunPlus, where I think like they're kind of weak is if like Doinby is not having a spectacular game, they kind of struggle sometimes. And for sure, like I was like, okay, Fnatic, if they ride this momentum, they actually can go to semis.
I mean, Fnatic on the second half that you were talking about, they did a lot of their good things off of Veigar, and the one game they took off of FPX was with Veigar, and they should know when mid laners get their comfort pick and they go off on it, how powerful it can be. But as we touched on again, they just gave Doinby Rise, like just stop giving him this champion. It gives him everything he wants. I said there's two champions that Fnatic should never give FPX, and the two were Rise and Renekton. Doinby didn't even need to play Renekton. He could just stay on Rise pretty much the whole series.
By the way, earlier in this tournament, I always thought when they were in the group stage, for example, that the big players for Fnatic that would decide, like the X factors, was like Bwipo and Broxa, the jungler and top laner.
Broxa was not
because of who they had in the group. You know, you had SK Telecom, you had the like RNG squads that are going to have like that's the lanes you could attack through. The problem in this series for me is like on paper, like I actually personally think the FPX bot lane's a bit overrated. Like I think their ADC's okay, but I don't think he's some super duper player. I actually think the support player Chris is pretty good, but I don't think their bot lane's that sick actually in FPX. So the idea that like the Fnatic bot lane, I found it very underwhelming. Like Hylissang, who came in with a lot of by the way, justified hype. Like he could have been the MVP of the summer split. Thought he was very underwhelming in this tournament. Reckless did nothing basically in this playoff series. And I just want to say, by the way, that whole thing where when he was eliminated from the tournament, he did one of his rare tweets because he almost never uses Twitter, you know, and he just said "lo siento," which is sorry in Spanish. But I've got to say, even though, listen, a lot of players do that, you know, you say sorry to the fans or whatever, I apologize. I have to say that's one angle with Reckless that I just can't vibe with. It's like, it's not to do with like skill. Like in terms of as a player, he's a good player and he definitely at times in his role fit his role very well. But I get it if it's like when you first join Fnatic and you're like a 17-year-old kid and they're all vets like Expeke and Soaz and they've all won everything before you got there. It's fine then to be the little kid and to be the emotional one and to be the guy who doesn't know what you're doing. Now you're supposed to be the Expeke. You're the guy who's established. Like not Humanoid, Nemesis rather. He's a brand new player. Like
he's a rookie.
The idea that like you're the guy who isn't like in that scenario basically Reckless. You're supposed to be the leader now, mate. You're supposed to be the emotional leader. You're supposed to lead in the server with your example. You're supposed to give a good game. I would accept if Nemesis had a bad game. It's his first ever year of professional play, so I do feel like in that area, it's not he's failing like directly, he's just not doing a job as like a leadership figure, I think.
So you know what's funny? If you watch Fnatic comms, I know it's a very small snippet, but Nemesis is the one that's talking the most, and he's like really directing the team. He's talking about, okay, I have my Veigar Keja, we're going to be aggressive here. He's making a lot of the macro calls. He's making a lot of the team fight calls also, and Reckless is especially quiet. And as you talked about, like when we think of Reckless, we think of him as the captain of Fnatic, the most veteran member, the leader. And
he is Fnatic basically, isn't he, at this point?
Even in the press conference afterwards, he aired a lot of dirty laundry, talking about how people weren't really happy throughout the entire year. They couldn't really find an identity. I'm like, you just lost a very, very important series, and one of your players, Broxa, heavily underperformed. To air stuff out like this right after you guys lost is kind of telling on what they're going to do next year.
Yeah, I just wasn't a fan of it overall because like the nature you lost is so kind of weak-willed the way you went out of the tournament. Like, even if you lose the game, I at least want like the frame you present to be like, we knew what we were doing, and like I'd even like it if he'd use those moments to just stand up for Broxa or something and give some angle as to why it wasn't his fault, it was his
exactly what Doublelift did.
I guess at this point in time, yeah.
Just do what Doublelift did. Doublelift did that as a leader. Like Jensen had a terrible game. Like everyone with good knowledge knows Jensen lost in that series, and the ball was in Jensen's hand, and he missed a crucial shot. Doublelift protected him, and Doublelift went out of his way. Reckless, on the other hand, just said, I'm sorry, aired out dirty laundry, put so much pressure on Broxa, and Broxa's actually the one tweeting something like, oh, we lost as a team.
Well done,
of course he would say
well
that.
Done, yeah. Well done, Broxa.
He's not the guy who needs to say that in this point
As
in
a
time.
jungle, just stick with that anyway. Mate. Unless you're the best in the world, just always say it's team-related, of course. What about this then? So since you said you practiced most of the teams except FPX, that implies, did you practice G2?
Yeah, we got, I think, a couple scrims.
Is it true, because they have a rep, like a lot of great teams in history, unfortunately, that in practice it's hard to know that you're hard to take anything away from it because you don't know if this is even real, what they're trying, or they might be just be trolling. Are they like that? Do they practice properly?
It was hard for us to take anything away from it because we would just get dumped.
It was wrecking you too much.
Like 6 minutes, the game would be over. Like we never played versus a team, especially, I don't know, at Worlds is such an insane experience because in NA, I feel like we went from all three lanes are just staying in their lane. They're all just playing for their 1v1, 2v2, and like usually junglers kind of farming efficiently, and everyone's just relaxing. And then you go against G2, and then randomly their mid laner just gives up 2 waves to go bot and proxy my bot lane turret at level 3, and I'm like, how do I react to this? My bot lane just like lost a game, and their mid laner doesn't care that he lost 2 waves, and that's something I never saw before. And they do it consistently, and it doesn't matter like what lane that they're going to. They'll just do it top, bot, like all they do is move together as a team, and they just absolutely destroy everyone.
And they're also so good about covering for each other. The play Damonte is talking about, it's extremely early, but when they do it later on in the game, when Caps roams, either Perks or Wonder will roam from top or bot lane to cover the farm for mid lane to make sure they're not losing mid lane turret, make sure they're not bleeding CS. They're really good about covering for each other and moving around the map together and planning out the next step.
Yeah, there was a certain point when we were scrimming them, I think we got 2 days versus them, I believe, and we were just like, okay, if they ever get a proxy set up, we actually lost the game. Because as soon as, there's like the big space in between the 2 bot lane turrets, and they always try to get in between that. I think there was actually some interview where they talked about their play doing this, and they said if they ever get into that spot, they just won the game, because now the enemy bot lane can't farm, and then also you're forcing the mid and jungle to come down there to help, and then they will just fight you there. And if they ever get into that spot, you might as well just FF.
So funny enough, I think they might have learned that play from Griffin, or they developed it together, because Griffin loves doing the exact same play, and they did it to G2 in the group stage game. It was when Perks was on Zoe and Chobi was playing Galio. Whenever they play Galio, they do that play a lot to make sure they can have priority and get that proxy going and dive the bot lane 4v2 and start them up CS.
I also think one of the crazy things about G2 is just their player strength. They could just play the most default League of Legends and still be, in theory, the best team.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they will run cheese and weird things that they don't know if they can fully execute. But like against the best teams as well, that threat is always there. Like when SKT plays, as happened in MSI, like SKT really has to be prepared that even in like a game where SKT could potentially win the series, G2 might just do some crazy like pick or draft that no one could predict. So I actually feel like that's a crazy like extra wrinkle to have in your game, just to throw people off, make it hard to game plan for you. It must just be so tough to know what you're going to get when you actually play them in a series.
Even G2 themselves. So sometimes I'll have Ender, the caster, on my stream, and then we'll talk. He said he heard from Grabs, one thing that always surprises them is they have the picks 1, 2, and 3 figured out pretty well. But when they go to the second half of the draft, picks 4 and 5, G2 likes to call it the 4 and 5 surprise. Even themselves don't know what they're going to do for 4 and 5. Sometimes they'll flex around too much and they'll get a draft that won't work.
I mean,
the best example,
we saw that in this series.
Game
2 was.
There's an amazing example we can give you as an anecdote, right, Monty, which is from MSI. This is real. In their series against SK Telecom, there is a game in which they give Faker, was it they picked Azir themselves?
No, Silas. They gave him
Silas. They gave Faker Silas, and then themselves picked Azir, which at the time was a terrible matchup. And if you actually hear what they say in the draft and then what they said in interviews afterwards, they effectively went like this. Their logic was like, just give him Silas, we can deal with it. gave him it, and then we're like, but what do we pick into it? And they were like, we don't really have anything actually. I guess we'll just have to pick a series. They did this themselves in the series they won. They lost that game, to be fair. But like the idea that you can even take chances, it also shows you how loose their mentality is.
Yes.
Like, they're not like a lot of people. If you're in a series and you've just basically in draft messed up a draft for a whole game against SKT, that's going to weigh on your mind. They let it go. They just playing the game after that one.
Well, what I love is how they can adapt on the fly and figure out win conditions in compositions that you were like, I don't think it's going to work. Now, it can't always work.
Some of the interactions they figure out between champions are genius. Like, you look in the draft, you're like, this is a terrible draft, but then you see what they do with it, you're like, that's why.
Or it's like, that is literally the only thing you could do with it, and they executed it.
Yeah.
Why are they allowed to do that, right?
Yeah. Have you guys ever watched like the G2 YouTube videos with their comms in it?
I love them, yeah.
It's so insane. I've never heard a team function like that where I believe the one that sticks out to me the most is when they played a best of 5 against Fnatic, and it was game 2, they were down 0-2, and they were like just joking the entire game. Like they knew that they were still in like a fine spot, that they could come back from that 0-2, and I feel like not many teams in the world could have that good of a mentality.
They also had the same thing where, if you remember, in that series against SKT at MSI, they were the ones that were down going into game 4, game 5, and they had to win from behind. When they were going into game 5, no joke, they were literally laughing in the comms, like, oh, it's going to be hilarious. Like, they were actually loving it. So, like, yeah, I've never seen any Western team that was as good, but at the same time had, like, the fun mentality. It's like they've blended the two. Because normally, if you got that fun mentality, it's probably that you're more of a fun team, and it's no one taking it seriously, isn't it? So I think that's actually an advantage for them, yeah.
So a lot of people will say, oh, G2 was like a perfect storm, like all 5 players were like this and they grouped together. I don't think it's quite like that. I think Perkz is an amazing leader, and Perkz has that mindset. Perkz is that cool, like I'm always fun, like we always have this, like I'm comfortable in that 1v2, and he exudes that charisma, and then it flows into the other players and the other members. He's a great leader. He swapped roles.
He's clutch.
Yeah, he is the player, and he is the reason why this G2 is like this from my point of view.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's like a premise I often use in Counter-Strike. So when you get a whole team that always wins, you know, the big clutch game, or they win in overtime every time, people want to say that the whole team is clutch, like every player is clutch. It's like, actually, normally when you split those teams up and people go separate ways, you actually find one player, maybe he actually is in every losing game after that. But I think I agree with you, like the core qualities of the leaders, that's what I was kind of trying to say about Fnatic with Reckless earlier. Like those do permeate out into the overall team ethos, like the team culture. So if you have someone like Perkz, there's a reason why people, it's not just that he's the best in the world at poaching, the people desperately are, like people are like trying to like climb over walls, like dig under tunnels to get to this guy, get in his room so maybe they can get in his team. It's amazing, isn't it?
Imagine Reckless was kind of the leader Perkz was. It's a kind of a hot take, but I don't think Caps never would have left Fnatic.
Oh, I don't think so at all. Like, first of all, Perkz is clearly the reason he joined G2. And then secondly, as you say, the weirdest angle about that move always was that to an outsider, you were like, that's the craziest move ever. You just finished second at Worlds. Like, dude, just stay. But what I think that actually means is, I think based on how they lost the Worlds finals and then some of the stories we heard in scrims where they were losing to like Dam1 before they were in LCK, I think actually what happens is Caps just like was one of the few players who could actually realize this is actually the furthest we could have gone. Like, second's pretty good, but you know, if we hadn't had this bracket, maybe we wouldn't have done this. So I think he realized if I actually want to win, I have to leave.
Also the environment.
So I think I agree. If Reckless had been like a sick leader there and he'd someone be able to convince him, like, you know, we'll improve next year, or this is only the beginning, I think you could have got someone to buy in a bit more.
Yeah, I think kind of to touch on that, I think like Reckless' career over the last 2 years has been really, really interesting to me, because there was a certain point where he like benched himself because he couldn't play the major bot, and Bwipo ended up playing bot lane for a while, and I feel like any kind of veteran leader or like someone who's really like strong mentality and can lead the team is not going to do that to themselves. And when it first happened, I feel like it kind of came off in the way that, yeah, he's stepping down for the better of the team.
Yes.
But I feel like he kind of did it hoping that the like storm would go over and that he could just go back to returning to ADCs.
Yes.
And then you kind of saw him go into this weird stage over this Worlds where he only played mages in solo queue the entire time, and like, I don't know, maybe like, it was just a weird like vibe from him.
How does clutch function in terms of like who's the leader on your team, and like what's the mood like for you guys?
I would say we didn't really have like one single person that was like a leader. Everyone kind of we all talked to each other. I think Huni was a big like strategy point on the team. He kind of taught us all how to play the game in his kind of style, and he kind of stepped up in the games when we really needed someone to step up. But other than that, everyone kind of pitched in a little bit on their own, and I think I also, on top of that, Lyra also ended up stepping up huge. I think Lyra was like a really big proponent on actually why we ended up going to Worlds, because something just clicked for him midway through our summer split, and he just turned into this like insane, like he knew everything all of a sudden, and I never saw something like that in a player before.
I mean, historically he's always been a player that has had a very high ceiling. It's just his consistency has like been up and down over the years. Because he started in Korea, then went to China to serve as like a B tier player for OMG, I believe. And then he came back and then was playing in Korea again. Then went over to Envy. But he has had very high highs at times. I think he was in the MVP conversation when he was on Envy for LCS. So. Yeah.
He was #1 All-Pro.
Here's a dangerous topic, though, because it's on the screen right now. The topic says, I didn't write these topics, it says grading clutch at Worlds.
But you would have written that.
They did. Oh, they did, of course. The only problem is this, Damonte. Listen, let's just be real. You did go 0-6. It's hard to give any. What can I do? I can't give like a good grade. You're the right?
You're the only Western team since the new format to go 0-6 in groups.
It's a clutch.
They also had a ridiculously hard
group. To be
group,
fair, nobody had as ridiculous a group as that, though. Because here's the other thing. Even if you look at like really group of deaths in the past, the problem you had is you also had SKT, so in theory you never must win any of those games. Then it's like now even the teams like RNG and Fnatic could in other worlds have been a #1 seed. So like the real problem is you had the from your position you had the ultimate group of death. Like there's no way it could be worse basically. So I agree.
Rough times.
It's not. It wasn't like when the difference is there's other teams that probably went 2 and 4 that actually played worse overall.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think we actually should have won both of our games versus Fnatic.
Yeah.
So we definitely deserve a pretty low rating at Worlds. Thank you for the grading clutch at Worlds. You can't say anything but F.
But for me, the contrast is, like I said, on paper, you weren't even supposed to be there at Worlds. That you had to win all these best of fives to get in position to do it, and then to qualify, and the teams that you actually beat. Yeah, so it's actually, just going to this point, I'm not going to say it's good, but it's certainly in context that was not a bad performance.
Yeah, I think there was 7 must-win games for us throughout the week 8 and week 9 of LCS, and then going from playoffs to Gauntlet, we had to win 7 matches in order to actually keep our season alive. So it was pretty crazy.
So what was your actual experience at the World Championship then? Like, this is your first time going. Obviously, it's a really, really different thing to be there, especially in play-ins. And you're probably boot camping in Europe. Is your first international boot camp, or have you been to Korea before?
I've been to Korea for a solo queue before.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I just realized it's much more intense when you're in a space like this, when there's so much talent like focused in one area. I think a big thing for me was realizing that all the players at Worlds are just so selfless with how they play the game, and I think that's actually a huge problem in NA is that there's so many players who are very, very greedy with how they play. And after going to Worlds, I feel like I kind of just realized that if you actually play super selflessly and I mean,
everyone has to play super selflessly.
Yeah, everyone has to play selflessly for sure. And also, this is assuming that your teammates are competent at the game. I think maybe, I mean, I'm not saying anything, but maybe there's some players in LCS who are not like you don't want to play to them.
What?
Or some shit.
Are you saying that there are bad players? That's a hot take, dude. Bad players in LCS.
Here's the thing as well. If we're gonna listen, I think by the way, I think it's legit as hell to actually like even ask the person like who failed and went 0-6. Like, what do you think of that? Like it's harsh, but it's gone. Yeah. On the other side of that, I'll say this. This is the angle no one thinks about. Remember, there's a world in terms of like who's going out of the groups where they could have been in Group B. They could have had the SPLYCE group and potentially, now I don't know whether you would have, because actually like J-Team showed way more than we expected, but there's a world in which you guys could have been in the playoffs. That really could have been.
Yeah, for sure. I think it wasn't too far-fetched, right? I think we... Hey, why are you laughing?
No, I don't think it was.
you know, actually, because we lost the 2 games in play-ins, if we lost that last one, we actually could have played against SPLYCE or Damonte, and then we would have been Group B.
You could have faced Damonte.
Yeah, but could have went SPLYCE as well, to be fair.
You know, actually,
that's not impossible.
Did you see that? Who's that? Showmaker put an interview out saying Clutch was the best team in play-ins other than them. We were the only team that could actually like go 50-50 with them in scrims somehow.
Okay.
We like talked to everyone, and I think Huni told me that they were talking to the Damonte players, and they're like, yeah, you guys are the only team that can win a game versus us.
Were they a good scrim team, Damonte?
Yeah, they're pretty insane. They just like, yeah, they don't make mistakes, is how it feels when you play against them.
What Tanner said regarding playing selflessly, like that's kind of the Eastern mentality, and you can do that to players when there's such large like pools of talent. Like if you're gonna be selfish, get out. And you can do the same thing in Europe because they have that Masters League and they're always farming players. Like there's always a next guy up. But in NA, there's so often not a next guy up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem.
So speaking of that, you're one of the few North American like prospects to be a starter on an LCS team. Players like you and Licorice have been coming up, and we were talking with Westrice as well about now that players can stream these in-houses. Since you were one of the people to actually survive this like NA solo queue talent development process, what do you think would have been helpful for you coming up if you were a player who wasn't quite LCS caliber yet, what would have been helpful for you right now at this point in time?
If I was coming up right now in this year.
Yeah. What do you want to see change that could have helped you?
I don't know. I actually have a different opinion on the whole in-house thing than everyone else.
Yeah,
I actually think the fact that we're putting in-houses all secretly on, or not like privately on our own server and only the pros can play is actually pretty bad for NA.
Okay.
I think obviously it's great for the pro players and everyone who's already playing.
Sure.
But the problem with this is that now all this random solo queue players are no longer able to play with us. If we actually
That's what I said.
If we actually commit to this, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's gonna last. I do not think it's gonna
doubt it
last.
would as well,
I give it 3 weeks max, and after that, everyone's gonna be like, okay, I just want to go play for LP again, and
there's someone trolling.
One of the problems with this is that, here's the analogy I give, because coming from like Counter-Strike where we have a circuit where you go to each tournament like each month, I basically get like the repetitive version of what happens every year in League. So in League, what happens is at the end of the split, if you don't win the playoffs, or at the end of Worlds, if you don't go far, basically it's the same as what happens at the end of every tournament. At the end of every tournament, right, all the players, because they've just competed, they all have like the kick of like adrenaline and competing, and they're all super hyped, right? So people who go out early are like, oh, I'm going to practice so hard, the next tournament we're going to win. But they say that in that moment while they're still getting the hype. When they go home and they've been at home for a week and stuff, they just become whoever they were before. So if before that they weren't the super dedicated player who was killing their and busting their ass, they probably by the next tournament are the same guy again. They've reverted back to it. So the real problem is after Worlds, everyone wants these great discussions. How do we improve NA? What do we do? But the question is, what's actually going to be like a permanent change? Like if you do in-houses for 1 month, it's not going to change the whole culture and make next Worlds NA really good, is it? It's not enough.
Like Damonte's saying, I think we discussed this with Westrice, is like if you're not giving the amateur players access to those same the same like
that's why your compromise of actually giving slots some.
Yeah, you should give solo queue slots or give teams the ability to give tournament accounts to up and coming players, so that you can start to at least get some level of interaction. Because if you just isolate the pros, there's no way for the amateur players to get better. In fact, it makes solo queue at the top even worse.
Yeah,
like it's just more trolls.
I think the big argument though is, I don't know how to frame this, but. What needs to happen is that, first of all, the pros have to kind of just stop being like really lazy. I think that's
be more diligent.
Like they literally need to care about like gaining LP.
Yes.
I think CoreJJ put out a tweet yesterday that was really like it was perfect. Like even if we have these in-houses and we allow these like solo queue players in, all of the LCS players, it's happened before. They just become elitists and they're like, I don't want to play with this guy because he's not as good as the rest of the players in the lobby. And like, what can you do about that? Like, the whole point of this is to help everyone, and we just kind of everyone needs to just go in solo queue. I think, first of all, they have to put Hilo, a server, on like the West Coast, or at least closer than 60 ping. Like, when we were in Berlin, the ping was like 25, 30, and that's perfect. Like, you can have a 25, 30 ping server and just put it in, I don't know, just Midwest or something, and I think that's gonna be better than 60, because when you go from like 60 ping to 6 ping, it's actually unbearable, especially when you're trying to play something like Riven or Yasuo. It's like very, very tough.
I want to dive into one of the series that we kicked off the show with, which is the IG Griffin series, because I think that this one was probably the biggest surprise in many ways.
Along those lines then, since we haven't asked about that one team, did you scrim Griffin? What are they like?
Actually, we did not scrim Griffin, yeah.
But you scribbed IG?
Yeah.
With and without Ning, or?
With both, yeah.
Okay, so we can talk a little bit about that development as well.
And he said they were insane from scrim.
Yeah. I think the thing about this though is that why I do think IG is going to make the finals. I just think they're going to lose to SKT in the finals, or G2 potentially. But I think for me, the surprise for this was that Griffin's strategy coming into this series was so questionable in terms of Chovy was having these amazing performances, like clearly in a world where they have this instability at the top lane between Sword and Doran, and you're coming in and Chovy and Viper are performing. To put Chovy on these tanks was just
look at this game one draft.
Like mind-blowing.
The Griffin draft is basically they had Nar for Sword, they had Tarzan on Elise, they had Poppy, which is Chovy, then the bot lane was Yuumi Garen, right?
Okay, so
what is that comp?
So the problem with this composition is that it is very good at taking vision. And basically what they were doing is they were playing it right, in that you have to face check into them because they have such an easy job of poking you out with Yuumi and clearing out wards. The problem is if the other team ever gets Baron, it's just over. Like, there's no way you can stop the siege. They're running all these melee champions. So you basically have to prevent the Baron or objectives from happening in the first place, and you have to dare them to walk into you, and then even then you may not lose that team fight, right? So it basically only plays one way.
Yeah.
And if that fails, you're just dead. And that's what happened.
Yeah. There's two. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna kind of touch on the mid matchup. And
Yes.
I never got the chance to play against Chovy, maybe only in solo queue a couple times. But as far as I know, and like my personal opinion is Rookie is the best mid laner I played versus in the tournament, and Chovy was the only mid laner that people said could actually really match up to Rookie in pure 1v1.
Makes sense.
And I thought it was just really, really weird that they ended up putting Chovy on so many tanks to like neutralize the mid lane matchup. I guess was their idea. But you even saw him playing like Aurelia games in the group stages, and yeah, he was like playing super well, and it was just really
That's
weird.
what's so disappointing, because look, in this series, that there was only a 4-game series, he played Poppy, he played Galio, Scion. Like, what are these? Especially because, remember, simultaneous to this, you have the other storyline of them fielding Sword all the time as the top laner. And then most of the time, he was the one getting the damage picks. It's like, what is this? Like, why are we giving the damage to the matchup that's going to get bodied by the Shy? And then Chovy, actually one of the few matchups that we have that could, in theory, win, because at the moment, Rookie isn't at, like, superstar form all year. Like, why are we taking the one matchup that, in theory, could win away?
Well, so if you have a really good coach, like, he'll coach the team and he'll teach team things.
Are you going to tell me that Reaper secretly came in and did the drafts for, for Griffin?
And then
He was like, I've got these secret ones I was saving for Cloud9 if they made it. Here we go, boys.
coach will come in and the coach will teach the team and hopefully the players a lot of good things.
Sure.
And then as the coach goes farther and like, let's say the coach gets cut or the coach gets fired, you won't know the day after. You won't know the week after.
There's a hangover effect, I always say. It's the same with leaders. Like, you can have a shot caller can leave. For the first month, you just run all the same things, so it doesn't look like he mattered that much. But the concept is when you have to change something, that's when it falls apart, right?
Griffin used to be a really great team. They used to put Chovy on Galio, Chovy on Urgot, Chovy on Scion, and they had a lot of success with that. But it was in a very,
different style, though.
and a very different meta. Also, and I think their read was Kiana's really bad into tanks because she builds lethality and she has a hard time one-shotting people. And when she can't one-shot people, she has to play with their utility, with their mobility, with her CC, and she becomes a different champion. You're more of a flanker than an assassin. And that was Griffin's read on the situation, and it just didn't work out.
Well, we spent a lot of time. I feel like the narrative of IG doesn't play well strategically and like wins off of mechanics is a little overdone because they were doing things in this series. I think that this should have probably been a 3-0 because if we actually think about Game 3 between these two teams, one of the most brilliant things that they did was they totally neutralized the Scion by like at 7-8 minutes. They decided to swap the Kiana into the top lane and put the Vladimir mid, which then forced the Scion who was building armor to be out of the Vlad lane. And when you can't, they basically just made it so it was impossible for Scion to roam out of the mid lane early and affect any other lane. If it hadn't been for Viper like popping off in some of these team fights, and also some pretty poor team fighting, admittedly from IG, like walking next to those brushes and allowing them to get like the huge like 4-5-man knockup on the Scion. So there were some misplays around it, but I think conceptually this game from IG was super strong about how to minimize Scion roaming potential. And remember, just think about this for a second. Why would you play this style when FunPlus Phoenix is in your region? Like, if anyone's going to know how to play against this like Scion garbage in the mid lane, it should be a team that practices against FunPlus because Doinby is the king of this style, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to beat them. They know how to deal with this. They spent all year dealing with this garbage.
That's what I was kind of wondering, if maybe Griffin was just screaming FunPlus a lot before this match, and Doinby was just playing Scion and just...
They were like bad FunPlus this series.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Plus, one of the things that killed me about this draft is, like, again, if I just look only on the Griffin side, oh, great, we're getting Zaya Rakan as our bot lane. That's brilliant. Yeah, it is. But, like, in this tournament, Viper was the player in this series who was easily the best for Griffin. Like, he was actually popping off.
Yeah, they were dominating bot lane.
And he was your damage source, right? So, great, give him good picks. But to do so, you gave Kaiser to Jackie Love all the time. Yeah. If you've ever seen the LPL, like, he's the guy where, like, this year he had to carry a lot more because the Shine Rookie had their own problems, you know? But in the old lineup where they were winning Worlds and potentially could have won an MSI, he used to be like the insurance policy. Well, I'll tell you what, that insurance policy used to be activated when he got Kaiser.
Also, Zaya means so much less when you have to play versus Kayle. That champion just decimates Zaya. Kale's Q is longer range than Zaya's, and also when Kayle hits level 16, she gets a bonus range in her auto attack, so she can also match Zaya in terms of the auto attack. So there's so much problems that Kayle can give to Zaya post 16. One thing I wanted to ask Damonte was Poppy into Kiana matchup. Is that a really good matchup? Because we almost never see Poppy mid lane, and I was wondering if it was specifically into Kiana.
Well, I think the Scion matchup is definitely the best like tank you can pick into Kiana. There's just like not much you can do. Poppy is a little bit easier than Scion, but I mean, basically, you have to end up doing a Kiana against any tank is just farm. And you're never really going to die, but you're not going to have any game impact. So Where I think all the tanks like play pretty similarly versus Kiana.
Because how I viewed it was Kiana has 2 dashes in her W and E. Poppy can cancel that. And Poppy's also supposed to be a bad champion in lane, but Kiana's one of the champions you can beat. So you can be strong outside of lane and still beat the laner you're playing versus. And also, he went Mobies. I think he might have sold it later. So he played to roam a lot and kind of matched the Kiana roam.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a good pick. I think like the Kiana in general is kind of like it's a hard pick to. What's the word? It's like if you pick Kiana, you definitely should not be expecting that Kiana lane to win. It's very reliant on the jungler to like kind of come and like help you get your advantage and help you even get out of lane sometimes. Like Kiana's quite a weak laner, so honestly, the IG probably just picked it expecting like whatever counter pick is fine, and then as soon as you get one item, the champion is just really insane. I think the ultimate is really like borderline overpowered. I think it's just so much CC, so much damage.
And by the way, what an absolute boss the Shy is, where not only did he play the kill, which everyone else, including the Sword, looks trash on when they play it, he played it into Jace, which is one of Sword's best champions. But he just showed right there the difference between being like a Naguri Jace and Sword Jace in like 2019. Like the Shy made that game was like a statement game. Like that's one of the reasons why I do think it's not impossible, not only for IG to make finals, but there's a world in which there's some miracle world they could still win this tournament. Because like the Shy especially has that faker old school quality. Well, he's not just the best at his role, but he has the mad aura where you just know he's going to dump you if you play him. Like, everyone's afraid.
What's interesting to me that came up in these quarterfinals is you saw some of the veteran players sort of returning to classic counter picks. You saw the Lissandra coming out against the LeBlanc. You saw the Yasuo coming out against the Gnar in the first game of these series. And these are counter picks that these players have been practicing for years in lane at this point in time, but they're not necessarily meta picks right now. So especially when we're talking about abusing players who are more new to the international stage or more new to the game in general, they're not going to know necessarily the nuances of this matchup in the same way that the Shy knows how to play the Yasuo into the Gnar.
So Damonte can speak more on it, but pro players are extremely practiced on a few matchups. Like when Azir Corki was popular, everyone knew the in and outs of Azir Corki matchup, and there's selected matchups you know really well. But when you add in odd picks in there, that matchup knowledge is a lot hazier than what it used to be, and with different items and different rune setups, the matchup sometimes even flips.
So what you're saying is, if GGS had gotten to Worlds, then my boy Froggen would have pulled out the Vel'Koz, the Anivia, all Trovian, that'd be like, what is this?
No, like, that actually would have happened.
Yeah.
Could have, yeah.
No, Froggen knows that matchup better than anyone else.
Like think about this. Sword is a relatively new player, especially compared to the Shy. If we look at the other side of that, where Faker's playing the Lissandra into the LeBlanc, that's humanoid, dude. Like he's not an OG player. Like these are matchups that these players have been really comfortable with in different metas, and so they can apply that knowledge in a different way. I was just surprised because I didn't see a lot of these classic lane counters coming out in group stages, but they started to come out here, which was cool.
Yeah, I mean, these matchups are just super classic matchups that I'm sure like even humanoid can play, but like you said, Faker's been playing that matchup for what, like 7 years at this point?
Yeah.
And it's just something that he's going to pull out anytime. And I think you can also relate it to when Wonder pulled out Yorick against the Naguri Jace. It was like, that's a matchup that Wonder has actually played like, what, 50 times, I'm sure, maybe even more. And that's a matchup that Naguri has never even played versus ever. Probably not in scrims, maybe in solo queue like twice.
Yes, I mean, I think those are good points. I mean, I also, when we talk about this draft with the Poppy and the sort of face check into us draft, I don't necessarily hate it, especially I don't hate it in game one of a series. Because think about this from Griffin's perspective. They probably think they're favored coming into this series. If they're going to pull out something weird, you might as well do it in game one. And then if you win, you force the other team to adapt to it and open up a bunch more picks. They almost won the game one, by the way, with that composition. But I think that what was impressive is also we come to game two, so now it didn't work, so now we have to see real drafts. What I loved about IG, and I kind of disagree with you guys in the way that you're saying when we were talking with Westrice, that this is sort of a very like sort of free style, because what I saw in this game from IG, this was the most impressive game for me from IG, because you look at they're trying to dodge like Jarvan and Galio engages. And so what they do is they spread out in the jungle in a very wide pattern. And basically you always see Rookie playing on the flanks, trying to wait until they go through a choke, W them, and then they just KO ult Kai'Sa and just go in and finish people off. It looked extremely well thought out and coordinated to me.
Maybe that play itself is thought out and they communicate between each other, but one thing is, IG also does stuff like Rookie goes in for WR on Kayle, and he doesn't get the Kayle, or WR to chunk them, and he doesn't get the Kayle ult. and Shai is just saving it for the Kai'Sa. Maybe they communicated that. Maybe he knew he wasn't going to get the KO ult, but there's just some moments and things that they do where it shows, oh, this team isn't a team that's very, very well practiced or very well coordinated. Another big thing is the 5-man recall. So as we talked about earlier, like resetting as 5 and not losing any time and not having one person like lag behind, oh, I need to finish my death cap, I need to finish my infinity edge. No, you need to reset right now so we can get ready for the next play. Like that's really big. IG does that all the time so their carries can finish items.
Yeah, I think that's why I think like IG and G2 are gonna probably win the entire Worlds is because how well they play as like not being greedy. I like said it earlier, but that's like the number one thing I took out of Worlds is that all these best teams, no one is greedy ever. Everyone, all they care about is, like you made the rugby, whatever. Analogy, there you go, yeah. Like earlier, and like you just want to have possession, and if you're on their half of the map, like that's all that matters.
So before we go into semifinal predictions, you guys have any other topics you want to discuss about the quarterfinal matchups that we saw?
We barely touched on G2 Dom 1.
All right, we'll talk about that.
Because, G2 Damonte also brings up the side discussion we'll have about the whole Dade award, because obviously I've seen a lot of people want Nagori to win this. So for people who don't know, I'll very quickly explain the premise again. So years and years ago, I think actually I'm going to guess Season 4 Worlds must be the first time, because obviously Dade had to have played at Season 3 Worlds. We made on Summoning Insight a fun concept called the Dade Award, and the premise was it's for the player who goes into Worlds really hyped. Like, in theory, they should be like an MVP of Worlds. And they not only do badly, they do like really badly. Like, they shit the bed essentially. So as a result, hence why Dade is the best example, because going into Season 3 Worlds, even if his team wasn't at their absolute peak, he was supposed to be one of the players who was going to like style on expecting.
Got MVP.
And then the idea was his team not only was bad, but he himself was like completely absent. So,
like really bad too.
He was last in almost every stat for the mid laner in that tournament.
So basically, the problem here already, right, is first and foremost, let's get one thing out of the way. I've heard some people commenting on like past winners of this award and saying stuff like, well, last year, of course, we gave it to Ruler. Like, who gave it to Ruler? Because we invented the Dade award.
This is a Summoning Insight award. Like, you can't give it out.
You're welcome to take part and have your opinion and stuff, but the idea that like it was officially given to someone and that's on a wiki, like get that off. There's no way.
No, yesterday I was streaming and I was reading the wiki and then it said, oh, the award originated with Monte and Thorin like giving it on Summoning Insight, and then Monte and Thorin stopped doing Summoning Insight. I'm like, okay, so the award also must have stopped, and they're like, nope, it became a community consensus thing.
Okay, who made that decision?
Wait, first of all, who made that decision? And where's like the community voting? Like who's taking part? Like who's part of the panel? And then so I was reading that article, and then I critiqued it. I was like, why did Ruler win it last year, and why is Nagori winning it this year? Like they don't really fit.
Well, this
the
goes
criteria.
into what I was about to bring up, which is the real problem. And as the inventors of the concept, we can explain this to you. The real problem is, like I said, what I just described there, like a player goes into Worlds as a potential like one of the best players in the world, does really badly, and therefore wins this weird award. That's not supposed to happen very often. That's the point of the award, really. Because what makes the award fun is you try to guess who actually is kind of flawless now, but who could have their like big fall from grace. It's kind of just an interesting way to model the players going into the tournament. But as a result, we'll now discuss it now, I actually personally think this year, no one, like last year, I don't think anyone should have won it this year. Yeah. Like, obviously the name people are putting forward is Nagori, right? The problem I have with that is there's two quick angles. One, half of the games he played in the tournament, not quite half, but it feels like half, were just all against the best team in the world who have like all this insane versatility we talked about, don't need to play through top lane plays a million picks. Like, there's very good factors to why that would be a hard matchup to have if you've never properly played against that team. Then you've got the whole angle that like, I don't think he even looked bad as a top laner. Like, if I was ranking top laners in this tournament, he'd probably still be top 5 for me. It's just that part of his problem, like I said before, is he's got this guy, the Shy, playing all the same champions, in theory, not even in a Korean team, and outshining him, so it made him look in contrast bad. But here's the thing, I would definitely agree. If you were like coming into Worlds with the hype that like Nagori could be like the best player in the whole tournament, then he did get overhyped. But if you were coming in...
But nobody said that.
No,
wait,
if you were coming
people
in...
said that.
Some people did say that, that's the problem.
All right.
But the other angle with that one as well is I never believed in that angle. I've actually downplayed that many times on this show as we've done Worlds, because the problem was he also did look like the best top laner, but with every resource and advantage in the world. Like, they put everything into him, give him all the picks, the jungler came top all the time. It's like, he had everything going. Like, any time he could get JC, he would play it in LCK. So the real problem for me is, like, I don't think he really deserves like to win a Dade award. He didn't like shit the bed. He just didn't do very good sometimes against the best team in the world.
So people don't.
And they still did, by the way, win their group. That's pretty good.
So people
That's a
don't,
reach.
people don't watch LCK that much anymore. So there's like few vocal analysts from LCK that will compliment the player or will say like this player is the best in the world. And people from the region, like if I'm an NA analyst, I'll try my best to talk about why NA teams are good.
Of course.
If I'm from Europe, I'll try my best to talk about why European teams are good. Same for China, same for Korea.
I mean, it does hurt that they only invite one color caster from the entire region, which is the most dominant region, onto the desk, right? So there's limited dialogue that can be had of representatives who have seen and casted every single game from that region.
So there was hype for Nuguri from the analyst, from specifically the Korean analysts, and people just bought into that.
Yes.
And then Nuguri went on an insane run in solo queue, and that made a Reddit thread, so people bought into that. And he did it in a very stylish way where he was running Klepto, and he was very vocal about it in interviews. So his hype was off the charts, but not for good reasons. Like, they barely made Worlds. They scraped by, barely beating Kingzone Dragon X. It wasn't like Dade, like winning MVP and then going to Worlds. So,
And also, Dada didn't even make it out of groups.
Yeah,
And
and
he completely looked like garbage.
and the other player that was like really infamous for it was like Name. Like
No,
Name,
but think about what you just said there. If you just reframe what you said at the end there. So essentially, his team were not only the third seed from Korea, it's like the clutch scenario. They weren't even necessarily a lock that they had to be the team to go. There was other people earlier in the year would have picked other squads. Sandbox, obviously, was way ahead of them. So of the third seeds, they were like a real third seed who aren't even supposed to beat 2 and 1. So actually, even if you're Korean, third seed making quarterfinals and winning a group, that's good actually for the team. That's a good performance in context of expectations. And you were in a hard group. They could have got eliminated in the group. So yeah, I think that's a whack angle. They didn't. He doesn't get the Naguri award. Does anyone else is anyone else in the category? Like I know another one someone put forwards was like Yankos, which is like, again, I don't know about shit the bed, but I will say I did think he had bad. I think he's underwhelming.
He had a couple very good games, couple very bad games. He was inconsistent. I think like you could make an argument for Jensen just because the hype.
Sure.
Just think about the narrative. I don't think the narrative holds up, which is why I wouldn't give it to him. But the narrative was, here comes Jensen to Team Liquid. He always does super well at Worlds. Look at how he hard carried C9. So literally the expectation is, from the fans at least, ergo.
Absolutely, yeah.
Team Liquid.
I thought he was the X factor on that team.
He should be coming in and looking super strong at this World Championship. The difference between him and Poe Belter at Worlds is going to be the difference in TL's performance at Worlds from last year to this year. Now, he played really badly, especially on the last day of
Played a lot more like
competition.
Poe Belter.
Yeah.
At Worlds.
So like, Jensen really, I think, underperformed, but I also wouldn't give it, like, I think the narrative surrounding him was dumb in the first place.
What do you think of Jensen's performance overall at Worlds? Like, did you kind of think similarly? Like, you thought expected more, maybe?
Yeah, I felt like Jensen was going to be really insane at this Worlds, and then when I watched any of their group's games, it seemed like he was only performing really well on LeBlanc.
How bad is the LeBlanc-Kiana matchup for the Kiana?
It's pretty bad. When he got solo killed in that matchup, it was like, wow. Like that was like, at that point, I don't know. You just can't say anything. You just have to like put your head down and walk backstage after you lose.
Yeah. And hope your AD carry makes a video saving you.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I think maybe I could make an argument for Jensen, but nobody has really struck me as like super deserving of the award. And guess what? It doesn't have to be given out every year.
Exactly.
That was never a requirement. You guys made that one up. We never said that.
They edited the wiki page to delete the last 2 years worth.
Fair enough. Hold on.
All right, let's move into actual semifinal predictions. And we're going to open this up by taking a look at some career stats presented by Microsoft here for our mid-lane matchups, which I think is going to be pretty interesting because we've got some really world-class mid laners in these semifinals, and it's probably the most exciting single position left. So we're going to start with the LPL mid laners, which will be 2 Korean players, Rookie and Doan B here. And I guess we're only going to look at Rise. It's the only champion they've ever played. But jokes aside, yeah, very close in terms of win rate. Both these guys have been playing the LPL for many years right now. Obviously, their styles and hero pools or champion pools are widely different besides this Rise pick.
The funny thing is, though, you wouldn't necessarily expect before you saw these graphics that like it would be Rookie who'd have more assists. You think maybe Doin because of the style of play, like the team's gathered around him, he leads them, he starts all the fights and stuff. But the problem is, you have to realize, remember, like with the way Rookie's played, he obviously roams all the time on some of those champions, like as you expect he would be, and he's the star player of the team.
Yeah, I think these two players were kind of the start of the whole like mid roaming for this year, kind of. Especially Doinby, he started playing tanks and he would just dive top level 3 every game, and no one else was doing that at the time. And like, there was even a time in the year where Doinby started playing Kled like almost every other game, and you would just see him running around, and meanwhile every other region was still playing like
by the way,
Azir Corki.
They would told me on my ear. The reason why they only have Rise there is because like there's no shared champion pool at all. Like obviously like Rookie's
not playing Nautilus, like Doinby's not out there playing like Yasuo.
Like, you know.
Well, I think this is a fascinating matchup because Rookie classically is like the assassin or mage player, and Doinby is the Nautilus, Scion, roaming everywhere player. Now, of course, we did see basically Doinby exclusively on Rise during these quarterfinals because that's what he was given, but he does have a very broad and very difficult to plan for.
Plus, the other thing is, Rookie himself obviously is absolutely not a one-dimensional player. Like, as you say, yeah, the best games is the ones where he spams you on an assassin, but because of the years he had to play in IG, which were the hard years where he didn't have many teammates, he absolutely can play like a brilliant control Orianna.
Oh, his Orianna's always been one of his
like, these are classics that he's amazing at these champions as well. I actually think legit, if you want to put people, I know everyone thinks because Faker's like accomplishments, it's like untouchable. Everyone thinks there shouldn't be a discussion about who the greatest is. I think you can throw him in that conversation. He doesn't win the conversation, but he's in the conversation. Rookie.
Sure, yeah.
Look at the longevity, the championships, the excellence.
I mean,
every year after year after year.
Like even before he left Korea, he was winning LCK. He won an LCK title, and then went to China, won the world title there.
He's a very accomplished player.
Yeah, and even at IG's lowest lows, he was still.
He was a stud.
Like he was never bad.
Player, exactly. Yes. People who haven't watched LPL might not realize this guy legit. Kind of like Faker in LCK, he's had a run that's like 5 years where, you know, each year he's like an MVP candidate, and most of the times won it as well, by the way.
I mean, I'm going to admit I don't watch LPL that much, so I was kind of surprised by Rookie's resurgence. Like, my last memory of Rookie before him, like, really going crazy at international tournaments was in 2017. He was the guy that did the group draw for Worlds.
Okay.
You know, they have that one-person club and do group draws. Like, that's what I remember Rookie from. I'm like, oh, yeah, he used to play in LCK, and now he's doing the group draw. I forgot he went to China. And then 2018, 2019 has been insane for him.
Well, I think it's also helped that Ning is back in the jungle now, but we'll touch on that, I think, in the semifinal matchup. So the other mid lane matchup we're going to look at is, of course, Caps versus Faker, Faker versus Baby Faker, like however you want to position this one. Surprisingly, Faker only has a 52% Rise win rate in his career, despite being probably the most famous Rise player of all time.
Only 69%?
Only 52%.
Oh, you mean the Rise one.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Yeah, only 52%. That's why it's a little bit surprising. But at the same time, if you look at Faker very low.
Here's the
in
other thing as
right
well.
there.
Let's face it, these are different uses of even the champion. Like Faker historically on Rise, obviously, yeah, you roam, etc., blah, 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 do well. Obviously, classically, Season 5 Worlds, he was a god when he played that. The difference is, for Caps and for G2, what an amazing champion Rise is. The amount of creative players they can make with like the Realm Walker, just amazing. Like, because as a result, it totally changes the concept of like getting flanked, getting skirmished. Like, they are so quick on the trigger to pull those players. I think it's awesome when he gets it. It's one of my favourites to watch for sure.
Wow.
And also, let's face it, as someone who doesn't play mid lane, when you get like fed on Rise, that Q is so busted. So I've seen that do like 1k damage on people. Like, well, again, what's the counterplay?
Yeah.
One percentage that's so deceptive for me is 70% win rate. When we look at the number 70%, like when you get 70 out of 100 on a grade, like that's a C. Like you don't feel good. But 70% win rate, like career win rate, is insane. So there's this concept called bunja in Korea. It's when you are like a god of your era, right? And one of like the conditions that sometimes people have is like 70% win rate in a certain matchup, right? Having 70% career win percentage
That's considered like all-time great.
Yeah, that's...
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, especially considering the length of Faker's career. You have to also consider other factors.
That's the key.
He didn't go to Worlds every year, right? He missed 2 years.
You have to remember, Caps obviously has only had like a 3-year career, basically. And every year he's a Worlds team. He's on one of the teams that was always in the finals of the LEC. So as a result, like, listen, if he continues his career, he obviously has the potential to be like the Western Faker and to have this amazing record. But it's just, he's only done it for 3 years. And by the way, I'm doing air quotes there because only doing that for 3 years is bonkers in itself. But that just shows you how insane Faker is. That even through like career slumps, having players who were actually bad at times, he has a 70% win rate for his whole career.
His 2014 team was absolute trash. Like, they were so washed up, except for Faker at that point, and even then he nearly carried them to the World Championship. So it was surprisingly close.
It does also help your career win rate if you have a whole a split where you just don't lose a game, Monte. That'll bring that average up like an MFA. Like, that'll really help.
I just cannot stress the 70% enough. Like, the 70% win rate is supposed to be like, oh my God, this player had an insane year. This year, he had a 70% win rate.
Yes.
To have a career win rate of 70% is just, it's supposed to be unheard of. And the fact that we're comparing two players with 70% win rate
Well, the real
is
point
crazy.
is, like, I kind of alluded to it there, but I'll just actually verbalize it so people fully get this. Remember, most of the dominant season for SK Telecom were very dominant. Like, they would lose, like, 2 series. So the fact that it's 70% means that that's how much it was dragged down by, like, the bad 2018 and the bad 2014, the years where they didn't do much, you know, and they were bad. Even losing loads of games, like at one point in time in like spring, SKT was in like 8th place or something ridiculous, you know. Even terrible results like that could only drag you down to 69% win rate over your whole career. Just bombing a whole season. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Actually sounds more insane when you play it that way, doesn't it?
Damonte, do you know your career stats? I know it's really big in football to know, like, oh, I have this much yards, like, I have this many wins. Do you know any of your career stats off the top of your head?
I'm gonna say the regular season win rate is not that great because I played in Equifax and then Close Gaming, and then I mean,
Hey, that's a top 3 NA team.
yeah, that's true. We went 9-9 though, so I think every single it must be below 50% actually, which is pretty sad.
Do you know any of your other stats, like how many kills you have? Because I know people in LCS celebrate 1,000 kills.
So I have no idea. I don't really look.
Maybe I guess it's just not a big thing in esports, like knowing your own stats.
What are your stats, Loco?
I don't even want to talk about it.
Do you know them?
No, I don't know any of my stats.
All Loco knows is he's 1 for 2 in OGN finals. So I give you the 1. I give you the credit for the 1.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And normally I'd go 0. I'd go OGN Champions final, 0 for 1. So
Not many players make finals.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. So let's talk about semifinal predictions now, because I think most people believe that SKT versus G2 is likely to be the actual finals of this world, because I don't think that the real final is going to be that competitive unless IG takes another step forward, which isn't out of the realm
Because of the bracket, my real hope for this is, like, listen, no matter who wins these games, I just hope SK Telecom G2 is amazing, just because of the bracket.
Yes.
Because as you say, there's a world in which we get a very, like, dull final, unfortunately.
But you think IG's going to win Worlds,
Yeah.
so you have a very different
Well,
opinion.
Yeah, when I look at this bracket, I think this is like the dream bracket of like Worlds. I don't think it could get better than this.
Well, it doesn't have a lower bracket, but you know, that's fine.
Oh yeah, obviously there's some stuff wrong with how it was made.
It was a very nice one, because like Riot would say this is the dream bracket, as if, because the thing Riot does is they can't even imagine other realities. They only live in their practical Riot box, and so thinking outside the box is actually inconceivable. So they would say it's the dream bracket. I would say it's a good bracket for what we got, but is not.
It's a lucky bracket. Thank God we got this.
Oh yeah,
bracket.
it's absolutely so lucky that we got this bracket, because I think also like the storyline between FunPlus and IG is so insane.
Sure.
The fact that IG was the only team to beat FunPlus, I believe, in the entire regular season is like such a crazy storyline. And it's going to be so sick watching like the 2 best Chinese teams go up against each other.
Also, they did not match up in the LPL playoffs or in the gauntlet. So we actually haven't seen a best of series in quite some time between the 2 teams. So it's not like, oh, because IG, I forget which like dumpster team they lost to. They just got beaten out of the
It was a bad
bracket.
team from what I
It was a bad
Wasn't
team,
even a
and they
famous one.
lost conclusively in the first round of the playoffs.
That's so insane.
So yeah, they were just gone. Well,
I'll also say the reason why I kind of agree that it's the dream bracket to have it this way is because in theory the dream is to have G2 and SKT in the final, but you need so many things to go right to get your dream final that we almost never do. So I'd rather just guarantee I get the match. Like at least I'm going to get G2 versus SKT, which based on MSI is a match we need to see again. Like it's so relevant to the rankings. I also think like in this scenario, whoever does lose that match can just say you're second best. Like you don't have to care as long as the person wins the tournament. Like SKT can still claim like we were second best. That would be legit. I don't think it's unfair.
all right. So I want to go into, because we touched on this earlier. You played against IG with both Leon and Ning, right? So why do you think IG is going to win this? Because that's a pretty bold claim, but you have the
Is it not a
insider
flaw
knowledge.
to not really have a good jungler?
Well, I think Ning has been doing better and better.
No, but in the context of Worlds, like of the junglers that are left in the tournament, like he's not one of the best. That's for
Split,
sure.
Tien, Yankos,
Some of those are bangers.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think if it ends up being SKT versus IG in the finals, I think the jungle is going to be pretty mismatched. I think Clid is just having an amazing like entire tournament. And I mean, just for IG, I just feel like when I watch their games and then when I also played against them, it's just so much pressure playing against them. And the only team that's similar to that is G2. So like, I know like you think that SKT. Do you think SKT is gonna win? Actually?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. What do you guys think? For the SKT. Wait.
I have SKT. winning
SKT?
also.
Look, I think
Okay,
I think
okay.
it's so hard because like I don't think that
Yeah.
quarterfinal was real from SKT,
Yeah,
and
that's
they
true.
still just styled on them. Like I mean, the trolling was
Yeah.
large.
Yeah, it does, especially in the drafts. And I think the drafts were really
And Monte playing,
Yeah.
being picked to play his world championship skin
Yeah.
in Game 3 was.
Here's my
ridiculous.
problem. Like, I actually think that the problem is people always say on every prediction, "Oh, it's so tough." And like, I actually don't. If you've noticed me on shows, I normally kind of know with my gut where I'm going and what my logic is. So I normally find most predictions easy, even if I end up being wrong. But I actually do think this is easily the hardest prediction I might have ever done on a show, this particular G2 SKT matchup. Because, for example, if I look at a lot of the factors in the game and how the tournament's played out, I think SKT is, in theory, on paper, the strongest team in the tournament. But the problem is, the eye test of watching G2, I said this on a past episode, the thing that they have in common with the old school classic Moscow 5 team is I almost feel like I'm watching a movie where it's like, you know, where the hero is going to win in the end no matter what. So it doesn't matter if he's tied up and he's over like a pool with sharks in there with lasers on him. You know somehow he's going to win. You don't know how. You know he shouldn't win. But that's how I actually feel about
That's a
G2.
good
Like I
analogy.
actually feel like they're problem solving, the things they can do in the game, the wrinkles they can throw in the draft, the fact that any player can in theory go clutch and win the game or come out and win his lane. Like I find it hard to pick against that. So even though I totally get why you guys are picking SKT, I'll say G2 wins it. I don't know how though, because like I said, it's not going to be some way I can predict, but I kind of feel like the reason I love to watch them play is it doesn't feel like they're ever out of a game.
So SKT is going to be up 2-0 and they're going to start monologuing. They're going to tell G2 why they're worse.
That would be the angle.
They're going to
wouldn't
put
it?
Monte back in.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you Rise, and I'm going to play this matchup. What are you going to do about it, Mr. Bond?
One thing that's so crucial for me in this matchup is Faker versus Caps. Caps did stuff that you're not supposed to do as a mid laner. When he played Yasuo,
Yes.
and he just stopped laning and he started
just
counter
started-
jungling
yep.
and basically forced Damwon to only have one quadrant of the map, you're not allowed that as a mid laner. You're not supposed to farm Krugs. You're not supposed to farm chickens. Like this isn't season 3. Like mid lane isn't supposed to dirty farm, but he's doing that. So
But couldn't you attribute that, going back to the point we discussed earlier about sort of like veteran players in classic matchups? Now, Faker will probably respond to that a lot differently than Damwon did, right? Because he has seen that in other metas, and he already has those reactions and that knowledge built into his brain, the experience built into his brain. So I don't think you can do that against SKT. Like, I think they will punish that.
So it wasn't a lack of knowledge. It was more so it's Yasuo versus Kayle, and the Kayle got blown open. Like Kayle TP'd earlier, and she was just losing the lane so badly, so the Yasuo was allowed to do that. But I do agree with you. Like Faker is not going to let that happen. So yeah, it's really hard to call, but that's why I'm leaning towards SKT. A big thing about G2, and the stat someone mentioned earlier, like he's only in lane for 22% of the time. Like you can do that when you're winning lane and when you can get priority, but Faker is just not going to allow Caps to have the same kind of freedom. And when Caps doesn't have that kind of freedom, then G2 has to play differently.
My big problem for this series, my big X factor is Jankos.
And Clid, because Clid's been so amazing
Exactly,
and
because the
consistent.
problem is, you look at the laners, like G2's style almost means it's not even just about laning anyway, is it? Like it's not you have to win the lane to win if you're G2. But then the problem is, I have seen some moments of weakness. Like I said, overall, compared to the form he came into Worlds, I think Jankos has been a bit underwhelming. Whereas, I personally thought Clid was a little bit overrated coming into Worlds. He's lived up to it so far. Like he's a monster. So that could absolutely be the difference maker, I feel like, if Clid, especially because, like, with the way the draft's going at the moment, like, what's funny is if you're junglers, you just get all the champions you want. No one's banning that stuff out. You just get the Lee Sin or whatever. So he's going to have his chances to go off in those games, I feel like.
I also think if we consider the top lane matchup too, Khan, despite having that reputation for underperforming at international
He's been not bad
events,
this tournament, actually. I think he's pretty good, yeah.
he was their best player.
This is it, he's turned it
so,
around.
I mean, in the quarterfinal matchup, maybe we could say like he was their best player. He was definitely the most fed player, but they gave him all the resources in the quarterfinal and just hard carried the whole thing. So he did his job. Helped that he had all of the many ganks from Faker and Clid up in the top side.
By the way, this series is going to be 24/7 top and bot lane ganks, like all day long. Like if you don't think those junglers are going to always be waiting to come down on that, as soon as you push up bot lane, they're going to all day long. I think it's going to be tons of action in this series.
So you played both G2 and SKT in scrims, right?
SKT on stage and then G2 and scrims, yeah.
Okay, so one thing that players sometimes do whenever they go to boot camp in Korea or they go to international tournaments, like they'll play versus someone, most infamously versus Uzi. I heard NA players say, I didn't even know this was possible on Kai'Sa, like Uzi fitting in certain autos or getting certain kind of isolated cues, and it's called like being on another level. Is there things that G2 or SKT did when you played versus them where you thought, well, holy, I didn't even think this was possible. I never get to play versus stuff like this in NA?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the two teams are very different though. Where like G2, I get that feeling when they like maybe make a new play or they do something as a unit very fast. They'll like perform like a map movement really fast. That's how I'm like I feel like wow, I didn't know you could actually do that. And then when I go against SKT, I'm like wow, I don't know how to play against this team because I don't know how to punish them. Like SKT still I feel has a very Korean mindset of they don't really make mistakes. They will never be the one to make the first mistake and then capitalize on that.
Yes.
So I think this is why also the matchup is going to be super interesting to watch because
absolutely.
G2 is the #1 team at punishing when a team makes a mistake.
It's basically the striker versus the counter-puncher matchup from any combat sport. It's why it's always so fascinating because obviously the striker, if he's really amazing, maybe he wins by knockout, but maybe the other guy gets the perfect timing and he wins in that scenario. So I even think it's the best stylistic matchup.
Well, I think you can still see that in SKT. The thing that hasn't impressed me about SKT has been that they still convert very badly off of Barons. Like they're not aggressive enough with it, and they don't push their advantage or they make a crucial mistake while pushing. And so oftentimes when I feel like they should be able to close with a Baron, they don't do a whole lot and then end up having to get multiple Barons to win.
So it's the SKT first Baron phenomenon where they'll go into 1-3-1 and they'll stay in 1-3-1, where I see a lot of the better teams, they go into 1-3-1 also, but once they have 3 lanes pushing, they'll converge it into a 3-2 or a 1-4. Yes. And they'll force the enemy team to be in an awkward situation. SKT loves just spreading out, making sure they maximize farm, making sure they get all the outer turrets, where I really want to see the stat for like G2 or Fnatic having Baron versus SKT having Baron. Fnatic just straight copy G2, so it looks exactly the same, but these European teams, they're so good at, once they have Baron, how to get an inhibitor, how to get a fight opened up. Like, how do we push our lead and how do we snowball this?
Oh, I think in terms of teams in this tournament, G2 has to be the best at capitalizing on what they get from a game. Like, they're understanding how to push the base in, keep the map pressure on all the time. It's like, it doesn't matter that in gold it can be even. Like, if they have the advantage on the map, they're doing something with it. They're making what they want happen.
Yeah, I mean, G2 was the team to really start, like, just sieging for the Nexus turrets. Like, no team really did that before G2, and they just realized, like, they get Baron, they're just gonna go push your Nexus turrets and then force you to come fight them. And all 5 of them will literally just sit there and auto the last Nexus turret until the other team, which is obviously weaker because they don't have Nash, will just have to come fight you. And that's like how G2 would win a game in like 17 minutes.
Yeah, but SKT in the same situation is spread out in 3 lanes, like farming. It's just so sad to see.
Also, by the way, Monte, the way you know that the world has changed in League of Legends and that G2 actually could be the best team in the whole world now is G2 themselves have gotten finally what I call Korean privilege, which is when you're the best Korean team, there's no such thing as bad drafts. Like, even a draft that was wrong, it's like, maybe I'm the one maybe that is a good champion. Like, if Faker picked it, like, that's the logic that people start using, isn't it? So the problem is, at their point, like, I mean, they've got the ultimate genius move, because if it is a bad draft, their whole personas, like, you all just meme and be like, oh, it's Grabs, haha, what an idiot, like, oh, we're trolling. But if you actually win off it, you go like, yeah, that was a secret thing we were working on. It's like, it's the ultimate get out, isn't it? Like, you can never actually be blamed.
It's pretty
or even
genius.
if they lose with a bad draft, which they might have done legit, really thinking it was the right draft, they can just be like, everyone in the community is like, will G2 just take it seriously and do the proper draft? Like, they just get away with everything.
So, talking about the other matchup, which is IG versus FunPlus Phoenix. Now, I think Ning has just been getting better
I'm going to predict
better.
this will be one of the least watched semi-finals in the history of the League of Legends World Championship, except by Chinese.
You mean by that you mean
by Western audience.
The most watched
by the
matchup.
Western audience, the least.
But overall, the most. So, but yes, I think coming in, looking at this, Ning keeps looking like he's getting better and better, more and more comfortable with this roster. The Shy can even fall behind and is still the most effective Kayle that we've seen so far at this World Championship. So how do you, like at this point, with Rookie and the Shy playing up to this level and them actually having a competent jungler, not amazing, but way better than we saw them playing earlier in this tournament, you know, is there a really good way to beat these guys?
So one thing we didn't get to talk that much about the Shy, I know we complimented him so much. Usually like these carry players, like in the past, like Marin and even Smep to a certain degree, they are not that great when they don't get resources, but not for the Shy. Like this guy, even when he doesn't get resources and he has to play weak side, he's so strong. And I think there's a huge mismatch versus the Shy and Gimgun. Gimgun's supposed to be a really good player. Like he's been looking like basically a better version of Dyrus, where he doesn't get any resource and he just like kind of survives, but he's not supposed to be that. He's supposed to be more like Impact, where he's really sturdy, he's always TPs, he's always good in team fight. So I'm really worried about this matchup.
I'm with you though, because this is something we brought up on past shows. One of the ways we changed on shows talking about top laners is I think it's unfair to just only judge carry top laners and be like, well, they carry, or Impact and be like, well, he's good at absorbing pressure. It's like in the modern day League of Legends, you have to be able to do both if you're a top laner. So if you're going to rank them on that, the Shy wins easily. He's not only the best carry, he's also might even be the best at being played away from on the weak side of the map. Like, he's unbelievable. So like, how do you beat a player like that?
I think he's the best player at World, and I think he's the most complete player by far.
I also think FunPlus Phoenix was massively boosted by that Rise pick, and I think that. So we've seen what happens. The weird thing is because we got the IG versus Griffin matchup, right? And Griffin randomly decided to play tanks in the mid lane. Like, I feel like we kind of got the preview already of what this matchup is going to look like with FunPlus Phoenix. Like,
yeah,
they just slammed them.
It was cool of Griffin to do that live scrim session where they actually like
they pretended.
Yeah, really cool of that. I thought, what a selfish thing to do, right? Give me a break. They must really like the rookie and the Shy, right? Good mates with their Korean pals there. No, I agree. Like that, in theory, surely if Doinby does that, they've just shown they can beat it.
Well, obviously, I think FunPlus Phoenix will do it better, but
and they'll
I think
use the righteous glory and stuff, and there'll be a concept behind it. Sure.
It's not like Rookie wasn't able to roam, wasn't able to make plays in that matchup, and generally was a menace. Like, Rookie was playing super well throughout that series, even against a million of these tanks.
I have to say though, I don't particularly like the individual matchups for FPX on this side of it. Because like I say, I don't think LWX was that great this tournament.
Tian might be the only favorable
He's probably the only one. Like I say, I think he's the obvious X factor. Because in the same way as I thought, that's the main reason I thought Griffin was going to beat them. I thought Tarzan would just control the game. They wouldn't be able to do anything without a jungler. Now, they brought in Ning. It was a gamble that ended up paying off. I don't think he was the main reason why, but it didn't matter anyway. The difference is, in this particular matchup, like, Tian can do a lot for FPX.
Also, Crisp, I also think is way better than Baolan, but Baolan has looked a lot better.
Oh no, I totally agree with that as well.
Baolan is an unbelievable player, and whatever. We'll leave that. I've already had one episode where we did that. We'll wait till they lose.
Yeah. Also, I think that while LWX has looked better over time, remember that there's a way I think to effectively ban him out, because 2 of the games that they won, they were leaning on the Varus Tom Kench like really heavily. And I think what happens if those are taken away is my question with LWX, because we've seen him play Lucian, didn't really go great. His Vayne was okay, but he's not really playing a lot of the meta picks. And if Jackie Love, I think, gets the Kai'Sa, he's been amazing.
One of the reasons I always downplayed Jackie Love, and again, people thought I was being a hater, is because, first of all, if you just looked at the amount that he carried, he didn't carry as much as the other laners, so I don't think you should get primary credit. But the reason I always also downplayed him a little bit is because I actually think he is living in the dream spot as an AD carry. You're the 3rd threat on your team, but you're in an era where everyone wants to ban out something from the Shy or take something away from the rookie. You just get your picks all day. Mm-hmm. Your job every day is like, right, what am I playing today? Kai'Sa or Xayah? It's like, I'd love to be an AD carry, to have that every day of my life. And you do have the skills in theory to be the best ADC. On top of that, so like that's the dream setup. So that's why I call him the insurance policy, because he's even got the tools to make it happen if he needs to in the game.
Yeah, you're also playing with a top laner who literally can either take 0 resources and just be there and still be strong, or he takes all resources and you just get carried.
Yeah,
you just get carried. It's pretty sick.
So that's the fun thing that's been happening at this Worlds, where every team has been so happy to trade Xayah and Kai'Sa. And at quarterfinals, people are like, wait a minute, what's your 3rd AD carry? What happens if we ban one and pick the other? Are you like Nuclear, where your 3rd AD carry is a Yasuo and you're god-awful? Or are you like LWX, where if we ban Xayah and take Kai'Sa, you're going to play Varus? Like, that can also be something that people test IG on. What happens when you ban Kai'Sa and first pick Xayah?
I'm going to guess Vayne probably a pick at some point for Jackie Love's an obvious one, right?
Mm-hmm. So when we get down to it, what are the picks that we're making here? Because for me, I've got SKT winning, not super confident about that. G2 could easily win. And I've got IG winning out of the other side. SKT IG final, SKT wins Worlds is my prediction.
I got IG and G2, and then IG is going to win Worlds.
But I've got IG and G2, but I'm going to say as a result that G2 wins this one.
I picked FPX because this one was really tight for me. I wasn't sure which direction I should lean. And then my thing was, FPX must be the 1st seed. They're the 1st seed, so they must have beaten IG. They must have dominated IG in their region. And when we go back and look at it, IG is actually the team that beat FPX in regular season, so that doesn't really go through. But I'll still go with FPX. It just bothers me to pick IG because I know how bad Ning and Baolan are. Like,
Oh, I will say, by the way, just because it's worth putting this context in there, right? Everyone who's a Western fan and only sees the great games of IGs loves to get on the hype train and be like, they're amazing, like, I'm picking this team. There's a reason why the Chinese experts, like Kelsey and Froscorin, will always tell you, like, I hate IG, because they're the ultimate team where when they get like this, they start look really good, you go all in, and then they definitely let you down. And then the time, like in the group stage where you think, well, they haven't even got a jungler, they're garbage, that's when they go off. Like, so they are the most, like, inconsistent and infuriating team in that respect. So I will say, it's not like the Chinese region themselves are all like, we are all in on IG will definitely win this. Like, I know a lot of them are almost like scared that IG wins the game because then they might have to predict they're going to win the final, and that's the last thing they want to have to do.
Monte talked about Ning being comfortable, more and more comfortable, right? That might actually be a problem. If Ning is way too comfortable and he goes back to who he is, he's playing so much for lanes right now, and I think that's making him a better player than what he used to be. But if he the old Ning, I actually think that's something that can be problematic.
That's actually the weirdest thing, though. Look, I agree, because when I saw them bring Ning in for the quarters, I was like, oh, it's the old IG. He's going to be going ham and everything. And actually, if anything, it's almost like they told him, your job is just do what Liam was doing, but just don't die as much. Like, that's about it. They didn't let him play his game. They didn't let Ning do what Ning does.
So it's day one of having Dardoch back versus like week 2 of having Dardoch back.
Okay.
It's very different. Day 1 Dardoch after getting benched and week 2 Dardoch after getting benched is very different.
Because my analogy for Ning was like any stereotype you've ever heard about a Chinese jungler, like you're just ganking all the time, ganks don't make sense, tower down. He's like that, because I always say he's never met a gank he didn't like. Like every gank is like, yeah, I'm good. He's like the guy who just, I don't even, he doesn't even do that joke of like, you know when you go in on a Lee Sin queue, he's like, that's what you do on Lee Sin queues. It's like, that's who Ning is. So I want to know if that Ning comes in the final, because then that'd be very interesting. It was that versus IG versus G2. I'd love to see that match.
Ning reminds me of Blabberfish, because you just see Blabberfish, he just goes forward always, and then you watch Ning and they're just both doing the same thing, and I'm just like, wow, this is just like
I even think
LPL
part of what
Blabber.
works for both of them as well is the fact that the other players always think, well, he's never going to go this angle, is he? Like, that would be ridiculous. And that almost works at that range.
That's Blabber Rek'Sai.
That range works for them, though. They get like a load of extra ganks off as a result, don't they?
Yeah.
They do also do, by the way, both of them, the classic like solo dive, where it's like, you were going to die definitely anyway, but you maybe kill the other guy. It's like, these are really weird risks you're taking here, guys. Like I definitely died, but there's a 70% chance maybe I kill the other guy as well. It's a 1-for-1. It's like, all right then.
All right,
Maybe wouldn't go for that.
Let's take a look at some plays here for Stream of the Cropping and get Damonte's take on some of like the highlights that we've seen from World so far, particularly from the mid laners. Obviously, coming into this one, of course, we're going to have the pentakill at the end, but first off, we do have at least, people have been saying Noguri is not that good, but there was at least a 4K that he managed to pick up here in these quarterfinals, right?
This was a pretty beast one, yeah.
The Shockwave, though, trying to turn it back. The shutdown now coming out. The Kennen is dead. Perks is still alive. Caps is still alive. Mickey still alive. They're fighting. They're holding on for dear life. But Nuclear and Showmaker are untouched, and this will not be enough. Dom1 Gaming are cleaning this one up. Perks does massive damage, but Showmaker stepping forward.
It's not the Noguri 4K. Excuse me. I was baited.
This is G2 Griffin.
Yeah, this is G2 Griffin.
Oh no. Okay, number 3, let's go.
I was baited. This is
SKT.
This right here is going to be
SPLYCE versus SKT.
SPLYCE versus SKT. And obviously Teddy here kiting it out.
They're chasing it.
The Draven.
Khan cannot die. And they're going to push in. Look for kill number 4. No way out for Visit.
Sadly, that also does show you how the ADC role has been limited over the years. Because Teddy's been to 2 international tournaments where his team's finished minimum top 4. It doesn't even feel like he had to do much, and he's in theory the best AD carry in the world.
There's another one from the SKT series coming in with an ace into the finish. So pushing into the towers right at the end of the game. I mean, what's interesting about the last play, too, is that was the game they lost with Teddy getting the triple kill. So they weren't able to really confirm that into an objective or a good push.
And I'll even say as well, to tie that into the RNG point earlier, that's also how amazing, though, like Korean discipline is. So we hear all these stories that the reason RNG is forcing everything through bot lane is that Uzi just gets to run the team, essentially. Teddy might even be the best ADC in the entire game, and he gives up when he needs to. Like when someone else has to have the priority, when someone else gets the picks, of course they give it up.
This one, look at the leaf. Look at that leaf. Kai'Sa's gonna go invisible. That cocoon on invisible Kai'Sa.
Pretty good.
That definitely right there helped out a lot because you just eliminate the Kai'Sa damage from it. This is the game that we did see Griffin win, but also yeah, as you're saying, Viper coming into the backline right there is a pretty bold play with the ult.
By the way, whoever, because I know they invented this ages ago, that concept where they show you the keys, they're actually present. It's actually a very clever, intuitive way to show. I've always thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
Because it is actually really hard to see just the animations when there's like 3 people on each other like that.
Yeah, it turns out
half of
there
League of
are a
Legends
lot
team
of
fights,
particle effects.
It's just
in
a
this
bunch
game.
of people stood on top of each other, and you're like, I can't see the pixels there. Come on, give me.
But I mean, that was like nearly perfect play as well.
amazing,
when you
yeah.
come in terms of ability usage, coming with the cleanse as well, like very, very impressive to be able to
That's
play.
why actually a topic to bring up, you briefly touched on it there, is that's the key thing, is because Khan's actually playing well, and aside from the Shy, the rest of the top laners have generally been around similar level, like no one else is really carrying that much. All of a sudden, SKT does have 3 lanes. Like, they really do have the triple threat. Whereas the problem before was, like, I always thought earlier in the year, Khan was kind of like a fake threat. 'Cause it's like, no one really believed he would beat, like, the top players if he went against them. In fact, everyone expected him to break. So now they get even more dangerous.
Absolutely. Well, we got our Worlds predictions in, so it's time.
No, he didn't pick.
Oh, you didn't pick yet?
I like SKT over G2.
Yes.
And I think SKT is going to win it.
Why does SKT win?
Well, the Caps versus Faker thing that we mentioned, I think is huge, and it might be a narrative pick, but Faker, the bigger the stage, the better he's been. I can't think of a time where Faker.
So we just have to get him to the LCS Spring Finals, and it'll be terrible. You get the joke there, guys? It was actually literally a joke about where they choose to have the finals. Well, anyway, keep going, Loco.
But yeah,
That was pretty good. Like 2,000 people watching him.
I also know Perks has been extremely clutch, and he hasn't lost the best of 5 at all this year. So it is a hard pick. But yeah, like even when Faker lost that finals, like literally no one on his team was doing anything, and Samsung Galaxy just picked Nazahar, and they just ulted him 24/7, so he couldn't do it. So I don't really even feel like he was the worst player. He was just the only player in that series, and he got disabled. So yeah, I have SKT going forward. I think Faker's going to step up, and Caps is not going to be able to play the same way that he did before.
By the way, think about how sick the position G2 is in. You can actually say as a Western team, like, yeah, our lineup, we've never lost a best of 5 actually. Oh, we've also beaten SKT before, and we also won the last mini world championship they had in League. So we're pretty confident actually. Like, in what universe has any Western team ever had that before? Like, normally you're always the underdog. Like, the bad thing about this one is I don't even think on paper you actually are like a true underdog. Like you say, at worst you're like 45, maybe 40%.
Yes.
That's crazy over a best of 5 to think that you could do that against, if you're not taking G2 as the best team, you're taking SKT as the best team. So it just shows.
Unless
like,
you're Damonte, then IG's the best team.
That's true.
True. And G2 is the second best team.
I definitely feel.
Okay, what about this then? So
wait.
why is he down on SKT though?
Well, before that, I want to mention what Damonte said regarding IG and why he thinks IG is the best team. If you play versus SKT, G2, and IG, even if you lose to all of them, just feel-wise, I think a lot of people that play will think IG is the best team because how they beat you is so brutal.
Sure.
Where SKT, it feels like they're beating you in technicality and G2 is beating you in movement. I feel like as a player, if you lose to IG, like you're just getting beaten down, and like you feel the skill gap, especially as a solo laner playing versus IG solo lanes.
I will say it is very telling that the only people I see in interviews trying to trash talk the Shy who are top laners are the like very naive ones who haven't played him, like Naguri, who are just like, I think I will beat him and outshine. It's like all the other ones are just like, no comment. Please, Mr. Shy, go easy on me. Like, so anyway, but since you didn't pick SKT as the best team, and you had them like 3rd best here, why are you down on SKT? Because you notice a lot of people are pretty up on him, I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you actually take G2, SKT, and just put player to player, I think you were talking about earlier that you think Teddy is like the best AD right now. I think Perks is like much better than Teddy.
Okay.
I think actually, especially for this tournament, I mean, Perks has been playing out of his mind, first of all, and I think Teddy's actually been super underwhelming. I think he's looked actually just nervous in a lot of his games, especially in the group stages, and then even in the loss where they gave him Draven. I think that was definitely a draft where they put a lot of trust in Teddy, right?
Sure, yeah.
And like where he did his job at times, he didn't step up enough to carry it. I think like G2 just is going to match up really, really well, and like Wonder is not going to get like abused the same way from like the team side of SKT putting
Khan.
Putting on Khan, and I just think like G2 is really going to be able to like match up individually well. And Faker versus Caps, I really do think Caps is going to get the better of Faker. And the reason I think that is just like, I don't know, Faker, you know, he's really insane. I played versus both these players, and to me it seems like Caps is like the new wave. And if Faker is like, he's still really insane. He doesn't like. he doesn't punish anyone though. I think like
he doesn't. Here's the problem. That's why actually the baby faker label for Caps is one of the few appropriate times the faker label's been used, because he does do kind of the things that the old faker used to do, where he doesn't just like beat you. He embarrasses you and like makes you scared that you're going to do something totally insane, like just dive you under the tower, even when he could die. The difference is faker himself isn't really like that anymore.
Yeah.
He's like more of a controlled player, isn't he?
Also, I don't think Caps has played really well this tournament. You haven't seen Craps at all.
No,
the whole
he's
meme,
been
like
pretty good.
he literally has not been playing any games like that. It's all been like Yankos and the support.
Mickey.
Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, I
it's been all
agree.
there
Those
now.
guys have had the most inconsistent performance.
Yeah.
Mickey X is the shocker though, because like I would never have expected him to be as bad as he was in certain times in these games.
So one thing to say about Perks, the two champions that are so meta right now, Kai'Sa and Xayah, I think you can argue Kai'Sa's maybe as good as Perks or even better, but he's the best at Xayah at the tournament, and G2 is also the best at Xayah recon team. And that's huge, being the best Xayah recon team and being the better Xayah. So I think that's going to play a huge factor in draft, and SKT has to separate Xayah recon from G2.
Also, just to add on to what I just said there about Mickey X, I would actually say the most startling area, for me, it isn't even the ints. It's how many skill shots I've seen him miss. He is normally absurdly good, Mickey X, at hitting like every type of a hook champion. Like that's why you can do all these players, because when your support's that insane as well, he's a playmaking support. So I think in this tournament, I think he's looking a little bit off actually. It hasn't mattered, you've got through the tournament, but to this point, a bit underwhelming. I actually thought he was the best support player in the world coming in this tournament, so underwhelming, certainly.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think we're going to take some pleb calls now, but thank you very much for joining us, Damonte. It was a rousing discussion for someone who was actually at the World Championship, so thank you for your insight. Where can people find you? Twitch, Twitter?
Just go to Twitter. I think it's @Damonte, and then my pinned tweet has everything else there, so make it nice and easy.
Very good.
It was a great time.
Thank you very much for coming over.
Cool.
We're going to come back with memes for Puma, and then pleb calls in just a second.
How long is this break, by the way?
All these blessings got me on my knees, feeling wavy with me on the screen. Yo, if you riding with us, get the keys. Like, is it difficult? No, it's a breeze. It's a breeze, boy, I told you it's a breeze. Yo, it's a breeze, boy, I told you it's a breeze. Yo, it's a breeze, boy, I told you it's a breeze.
Cara, cheguei na BGS, eu tava de máscara, né? Tem que usar uma máscara, aí eu cheguei lá, a gente ia fazer um meet and greet. Mentira, não era meet and greet não, a gente ia fazer uma brincadeira com o público, eu e o Jovi, gastamos a onda, a gente fez um 2x2, tá ligado? Chamou o pessoal da plateia, a gente escolheu, gastamos a onda. Foi muito legal mesmo.
I just came to do whatever, got to the border, stay down for the tours, lay down on my doorway. I ain't with distorted faith, you should stop ignoring, babe. Some of these conversations, I swear that they be so odd. Ask if I'm a minister, I told them that's my home squad, meaning that's my home job, meaning that I'm home first, yes I own my own job. I know that makes it so hurt, ain't been to a home church, but I feel like my home's church. Showed up to my church home, I guess I do their homework.
Evento, acabamos de chegar, né? Fazer um meeting no Gratão. E é isso, vamos gastar a onda agora. Acho que em termos de evento, assim, eu não consigo falar muito bem, porque eu só vou pra BGS e eu fico com poucos stands, que é difícil eu me locomover lá. Mas aí o que eu vejo assim, na BGS, todo ano tem mais e mais gente, porque né, o nosso cenário tá crescendo, eu acho isso muito legal. Então, cada ano a BGS tá melhorando em termos de investimento, em termos de evento mesmo em si, e o pessoal tá conhecendo mais e mais. Então, show de bola. Qual o momento que eu acho que foi mais memorável da BGS? Eu acho que foi quando teve uns 5 ou 4 fãs esse ano que, galera, que, sei lá, me tocaram um pouquinho, que me abraçaram assim, choraram, falaram, pô, não sei o que, você foi um momento mais difícil e tal, mandaram um textinho pra eu ler. Aí eu li quando cheguei em casa e, pô, foi bem legal, foi bem emocionante, digamos assim. O que eu diria pros fãs que vêm pra me ver? Pô, mano, vem mesmo porque eu tô cheirosinho. Só obrigado, rapaziada. Obrigado por tudo aí. Agradeço tudo que eu tenho na minha vida hoje. Sei que nada disso seria possível sem vocês. É é isso, mano. Temos que tratar todo mundo da melhor forma possível. Que como sempre trata. Muito obrigado. Tá maneiro, tá maneiro. Salve, chefe.
Twitch! Tá suave, Juqueira. Valeu, irmão. Como você tá?
Salve, rapaziada, mano. Eu tô aqui na Twitch fazendo um meet and greet agora. Mano, o evento tá sendo espetacular. Todos os dias eu tô encontrando muita gente aqui. Eu acho que é o terceiro ou quarto meet que a gente já faz. A gente já fez na Epic, fizemos na Intel. Na Twitch vai ser o quarto meet que a gente vai fazer hoje. Então bora lá, mano.
Cara, menor do Fortnite, né, mano? 13 anos de idade, 15, o cara mais alto que eu, tem 1,86. Eu falei, caraca, não, o Knicks, né, mano? Muito legal. Muito legal saber que, pô, menor com tão novo assim, já tem uma mentalidade, tá ligado? Absurda. Já tão uma vida bem caminhada já, se continuaram desse jeito, absurdos. Dois moleques absurdos. Rapaziada, quem gostou do vídeo aí, não esquece de se inscrever no canal da Cloud9. Tamo junto, mano. Fico muito feliz aí que vocês tenham curtido todo esse conteúdo que a gente vem trazendo aí pra vocês. E é isso, gente.
Welcome back to the 9 Summoning Insight, presented by AT&T. We have memes, which you can send to us on Twitter with hashtag the 9s. And if you are North American,
That music was a bit jaunty, wasn't it?
Hey, it was upbeat.
It was
and
like,
you're
let's
over
turn
18,
up.
and you follow Cloud9 on Twitter, you too can win the meme competitions. We've got one more left for you to win a Puma gift card, so send them our way. So what do we got this week? We have a couple ineligible people because some people still meme even though they aren't able
the old
to
easy
win.
targets.
Like
the old, there we go.
Reasonable and easy prediction exists. Loco Doco. TL wins, Gom wins, Griffin wins, Fnatic wins, Damwon wins.
Out of all those, I will defend the Griffin wins. That one, I'm pretty sure Griffin was the favorite.
Oh no, that one I don't even think is unfair. Exactly. Yeah, no,
I predicted IG to win.
That's true. But it was hard to know the reasons why.
Yeah, you guys also convinced me not to put FunPlus Phoenix. So you put Fnatic.
I don't. Here's the thing. I almost
got all the quarters right.
I don't think the Fnatic one's too egregious. I think that one was reasonable.
Fnatic didn't want to win that day for some reason.
They also we didn't mention it, but they also underperformed a bunch of them. I think individually, you know. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael Out.
Wasn't bad.
We look at the next one. This one isn't eligible either.
Okay.
I do like this
That is
one.
basically well done. Yeah. That's kind of the formula. You figured it out already.
See,
Yeah.
we're even showing the meme that is about, it's meta now, about flaming
that.
Loco. And the first meme was also about that.
Also, remember, he's trying to get next level meta and himself win a contest while telling us, revealing the method of what he's basically criticizing.
It's
us,
good,
and then
right?
Showing us that if we indeed do the same method, then we'll have to actually pick him to win.
Yes.
So that's the next level mind.
It is.
I like
It
that.
really
I like
is.
that.
I
really
just want to
meta.
clarify that it's a meme section. You guys can send in memes about worlds.
Anything.
It doesn't have to be about
It
flaming.
doesn't have to be about Loco. It doesn't have to be. Just a lot of them coincidentally are. So,
For
anyway.
some reason that no human being could possibly guess. Anyway, let's look at the ones that are actual contenders for this week coming up. So, Slasher, I guess. What do bikes carry people?
This is Sword, I'm assuming.
Yes.
The one driving it, yeah. Okay.
So these are the Doran's items, obviously, where they killed behind.
Yeah, it was good.
Stupid TV Mac. I love this one.
That was pretty good. It's a classic. It's a classic meme template. All right, let's go to the next
It was
one.
well done.
As a community punching bag, I love it when there's a
There we
different
go.
community
This
punching
is well
bag.
done. This is well done.
I like this one from Morgan L. Pope Cheetos the 14th, who also has called into our show before. So thank you. I guess you could say Griffin fell on their own sword.
That's well done.
I like this one. I love all these like medieval template memes too.
Plus, this guy actually understands a concept about puns that most people don't get. So I'm going to reiterate it for the 1 millionth time. It can't only work as a pun. That's not a pun. It has to, like, that sentence works even if you don't know who Sword is. Like, yeah, metaphorically, they fell on their sword.
Yep.
It works in both. That's what a pun actually is, by the way, guys. Not when you just awkwardly jam in. Like, if he'd have been like, oh, I guess he's, I don't even know. What would like the reference here be? If I guess, I guess you could say that the team who beat Griffin were Lehens. It's like, that doesn't even work because that doesn't work as a pun, does it? Like, you know.
All right, what's the last one we've got?
That's not bad so far.
I like this one a lot. All right, so John Widow says G2 is the best team in the world. So Loco says, yep. Do you agree with it? Thorin, will Damwon make it out of groups?
Nope.
No. So the best team in the world could beat Damwon.
Makes sense to me.
So G2 will beat Damwon.
Nope.
The reason why this is well done as well is, first of all, it's funny. Secondly, it really does tie into real analysis we made. And then thirdly, and you notice this is, I'm a stickler for this, he correctly uses the meme format.
Yes.
Like he actually, he picked the right meme format. It wasn't like when people just pick one, like that last meme where people looking at the girl and then it doesn't make sense the premise of what they're doing. You know? This actually works very well. It's well done.
I like this one a lot too, from John Widow.
And by the way, to be fair, jokes aside, that absolutely can happen in analysis, where obviously you think one team is a better team, but you think the other team will win.
Yes.
Like, that's funny, but that obviously can happen.
Also,
that's a legit thing that can happen.
To be fair, there was a difference between doing the analysis for the group stage when you hadn't seen the teams yet, and then changing your mind for quarterfinals.
Yeah.
That's totally legit.
But I will say I flip-flopped way too hard.
You did a bit too hard, yeah.
No. After my original top 3 teams going into World were SKT, FPX, and G2, and I had a good read on all 3 of those teams. And then after groups, I was like, oh my God, Fnatic, oh my God, Damwon, and I started overrating those teams where I should have stuck more to like.
I'll tell you what.
Because remember, I was the only one of us who had Damwon first in their group, right? So, and you were telling me, oh, you're overrating them. Like,
think about this. Part of the problem is the format. Those teams you all described are the teams that basically aced the last week. And since the last week is you play on one day, what happens is you have one day where you watch a team just go mental and wreck everyone, Griffin. So what happens is after that one day, you go, holy, they have to be the best. Whereas the other one's so spaced out, you take it more reasonably. So I think, unfortunately, it's too easy to get skewed by that second week, isn't it? Like, it just makes you get super hyped for the team that 4-0s or 3-0s or whatever, you know.
The problem is like if you come up with something on that one day, other teams don't have a chance to adapt. But if you give them a week, they're going to adapt to.
So I think it actually overemphasizes your strength.
But this is just a joke, and it is funny. Like
I think this is actually the toughest. Is that all of them?
Yeah, that's the third one.
This is the toughest one to pick the winner of. I do like this last one though because I like the format as well.
I like the one where I wasn't made fun of.
I like the Griffin one personally.
That was good as well.
I personally prefer.
Let's go with the Griffin one then.
All right, we'll go with Pope Cheetos as the winner of the Puma gift certificate.
There we go.
So remember, you can be featured whether or not you're eligible, but to be eligible, NA resident, 18 or older, and following.
If you're not,
Cloud9,
send us
use
one anyway. If it's
#9.
funny, we might.
Yeah. We'd love to see them. Like some of these have been really good from the non-North American residents. So with that, now it's time, of course, to take some pleb calls, our favorite part of the show. But first, we're gonna take a little look at a video while we prepare our first little segment for you guys, and we'll select some callers.
Stand back, watch me play, I'ma prove it. And all the shade that throwing me, well, I'm gonna use it. I ain't afraid, I'm where I belong. They said that I was nothing, well, nothing's got something going on. No.
All right. Plebs, your time is now. Are you in the Cloud9 Discord? Have you been waiting to ask your favorite questions? This is your moment to ask us for the last, 15, 20 minutes of this show. So first up is going to be Teals. Hello, Teals. Please enlighten us with your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, mate. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So one of the most famous clips in all of League of Legends is Zed's outplay, Baker's outplay on Ryu and the Zed Ditto. So what I want to bring is what would happen if we bring blind pick best of fives back into the scene? Like, which teams would benefit the most? How would it affect the meta?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great question, by the way. It's one of those ones where what I like about it is it serves two functions. One, there's a great abstract discussion, what about the best of five blind pick? And then there's the other one, which I love, which he tied in, which is pick a few teams now that would either be better or worse.
So what's so interesting to me now about having blind pick is that this has been the most interesting meta in terms of flex picks.
To guess the flexes would be insane.
In draft.
I don't think you could do it.
That I've seen. So because so much of the draft strategy right now is based off of hidden information and flex picks, I don't actually know what would happen if neither team could see what the other one was locking in.
I think what would happen is a solid 10 or 15% of the time, you would actually lose game from draft. You wouldn't know it. You'd go in like to be fair, it's blind picks. You'd probably still pick your comfort champion, but you'd have times where, like you're saying, because you have no way to even know if there is a flex or what. And remember, like what we said about G2 earlier, where they're considered to have one of the best draft phases, and they themselves don't know what's going to happen later. Well, again, you're doing it completely in the blind there. So as a result, you can't actually do all the creative things we do currently in the draft phase.
Well, you also have to pick a very kind of conservative composition most of the time, because you can't just sort of like pick for scaling or pick with very little wave clear. Like you kind of just have to, the way teams used to draft like this was you sort of just had to split the difference almost. And obviously globals or certain power picks that were super popular. Like, let's get that out of the way. Everybody would pick Pantheon first off. It's been banned the entire tournament, so definitely that would
Where
happen.
would Pantheon go? That would actually be a big question in the blind draft.
Yeah.
Top, jungle, mid, even support, like all these positions is really viable. And as someone that practiced during the blind pick era, usually you don't practice that much for blind pick. You're like, we're never going to go to game 5. And also, if you do go to game 5, just everyone play our best champion. So prepping for the blind pick is really weird because you don't want to spend a lot of time into it. But when you do get to it, it's so important. And it's just about theorycraft in that moment and like how you feel about that series and who's hot.
Yeah, honestly, like even though I've famously been a proponent for blind pick over the years, I actually think it's more interesting to not have blind pick in this meta because of the number of flexes and like the mind games that go onto the draft. I think the draft is really fascinating right now, and I think getting rid of it probably would create some lower quality games. Because just to be clear, the argument in favor of doing that is always like, well, I want to see every player play their best champion.
Exactly.
Because one of the problems you have in a game like in a MOBA with bans is like, well, shit, I just never get to see my favorite player on their best champion. Like, that just actually sucks.
It's like I've often made this point, right? There's no sport in the universe has a quality like this. Because, like, imagine, for example, if there was some option where when you play against, like, I'll pick a random team here, so I'll pick, like, the Texans in the NFL because they have, like, probably the best wide receiver. Imagine somehow you could just ban out wide receivers from the game.
Or literally,
what would the point of that be?
You're playing against the Golden State Warrior and you ban 3-point shots for Steph Curry. Like, that's just lame. Like I want to watch Steph Curry shoot
not
threes.
Not only would it make it so that, like, first of all, people are doing it all the time, but secondly, what would suck is the person who's the best at something would never get to do it. So what I love now is, like, one of the things that would be really cool to me is in a game like League of Legends, so the most famous example is the Zed versus Zed. If Faker is the best on Zed and Zed is the most powerful champion, you can't stop him picking it. Like, if he can just go off and he's the best player, that's cool to watch. Like, there is a very, very compelling aspect to that.
So people adapted a lot. So before, everyone had their one champion, like Mad Life with Blitzcrank or Faker with Zed. Like, everyone had a champion. But now people have champion oceans. Like, people just don't play 1 or 2 champions anymore. And if you do, you're going to get targeted out. You either have to adapt or you're going to get pushed out of the pro scene. So it is really weird to think about blind picks nowadays.
And also, just from coming back into League and watching this Worlds, at no point in time have I felt like offended that I don't get to watch a player play a certain champion, right? Like, at no point in time I've been like, damn it, like I really wanted to see this player play this champion because the flexes have been so interesting and like because there's so many, like the strategy is so deep in terms of champion pool and champion selection right now. I feel like most of the players at some point in Worlds have gotten to play champions that I was excited to see them play.
Yeah, and teams have been so generous giving other teams their best champion. Like when Nemesis was going off on Veigar, here, have another Veigar game. When Doinby's going off on Ryze, here, have another Ryze game.
Well, I think it's hard because there are 100% bans like Pantheon and stuff like that. So
the one angle I always used to find blind pick very compelling from, though, is just to try and guess at what it means about what this pick suggests about the psychology of the player or the team. Because sometimes what it will show you is, guess what, in another draft, maybe he's picking this just because it's where it is in the priority and where the lanes are. But in the blind pick scenario, you'll find those rare occasions where someone picks something that isn't even that strong in the meta because he just thinks he's the best.
Also, you have to discuss, too, that we now are playing in a game that probably has 40 to 50 more champions than when blind pick existed.
Yes.
So it was a lot easier to ban out the good shit back in those days where it's like way harder now, even with more bans.
So most infamously, both Froggen and Rapidstar, when they played each other for the blind pick game 5, their best champion was Anivia, but they didn't want to pick Anivia because they felt like Diana could beat Anivia. So both of them picked Diana, thinking the other one would play Anivia. We got a Diana mirror when it wasn't their best champion, and they just wanted to dodge the Diana into Anivia.
All right, we're going to take another caller now.
Oh, wait a second. So one aspect that I think we should just finish that up on is he said, like, like, for example, like, which teams would benefit from it. So, like for example, I actually think, by the way,
I think G2 would be hurt by it.
I think G2 would be hurt, obviously, because like we just said, they're basically the maestros of the current.
I think IG would be helped by it.
Would help him a lot. Imagine if you couldn't stop the Shige picking whatever he wants every game.
Shai
in the 5th game.
every single time.
Yeah. So I think like probably IG would be the biggest beneficiary of the teams left. SKT would probably be somewhere in the middle. And
I think it would probably help FPX.
Yeah, I think G2. I think G2 with the way they draft and how smart their flexes and strategy are would be the team that would be most.
Oh, and by the way, one team that would love this format is Fnatic.
Yeah.
Think about that. They could pick exactly the comp they want.
Every time.
That would actually help them. That would make them very legit, I think.
And also, if Blind Pick came back, I'm pretty sure one thing people will do is people will do stuff like Vladimir Kayle, and depending on the matchup, they'll send the Kayle player to mid. Like they'll send like Cap's top lane and one their mid lane, depending on what they need.
All right, we're gonna take the next call. Hello, Reform. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your question?
It's kind of a two-parter. So the champion pools of a pro player is bigger than what's demonstrated on the stage. So how do you properly assign blame without knowing the comms of the team? And this is the second part question was to Loco. As a former coach, was there some form of process that you guys had with picking champions?
Okay. Right, on the first,
I'm also a former coach, just to put that out there.
I thought you didn't coach.
He's probably a TSM fan, but
so obviously on the first part of his question was about
champion
pools and how.
Oh, it was the concept that since you can't know someone's champion pool, like how do you assign the blame? Like how do you know, for example, you know, he didn't say that, yeah, it was fine.
So I actually received a lot of flack for this one, so I'll try to explain my thought process. So I gave Fnatic and Reckless a lot of crap when they picked Kai'Sa, and he didn't seem very proficient on Kai'Sa. So Fnatic fans fought back at me saying stuff like, oh, he plays Kai'Sa all the time in scrims, he plays it in solo queue, like how do you know he doesn't play Kai'Sa? Well, he played it.
He plays it in my dreams every night. Give me a break.
He only played it once in summer, and then he pulled it out versus the FPX series to deny them Kai'Sa, and he just didn't look very good on it. So I blamed Reckless, like this guy doesn't really play Kai'Sa, and they tried to use it as a takeaway, and he wasn't very good on it.
The second part of what you said there nails is how I justify it. So my logic goes like this. I don't need to know what his champion pool is because I can see every other player in his role in the world. So if every other player in the world is competent on Kai'Sa and 3 or 4 other picks, they can force them out, and then you can't do those things, by definition, at your job, you are worse. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter that I don't know whether you play. I just watch what happens in the server. So when people tell me that, like that's happened to me in the Counter-Strike world so often, Loco. But in scrims, this guy's insane. Great. Well, when I see that, I'll go ahead and give him that credit. I only analyze the real games, guys. I don't analyze scrims. I just analyze tournament matches. So, like, we all know it's a different world, isn't it? So the problem is, I would say this, by the way. By default, my assumption is most players have a larger champion pool than they use on stage. The thing is, that's part of being a pro. What is your comfort? Can you play when you're uncomfortable? Can you play losing matchups? Like, if anything, these qualities, I think usually are spun to be in favour. Like, we're bigging up the Shy, the fact he can win any matchup. Like, that works in your favour. It's not only to criticise, you know, we're not just wrecking everyone.
And the second part of that question is, now, it's changed a lot, right? Because back when I was coaching, there wasn't even an official coach position, right, for LCS teams. So there was no opportunity to be on stage to affect the draft. And also now teams have gone a step further where they will have a specific draft coach, right? So there is literally somebody's job a lot of the time to be the person researching the draft. So not the best person to talk about this anymore, but I can say that what I used to do back in the day is there's a lot of spreadsheet work where you are basically trying, when I would discuss with my players, and particularly Link, who was one of the smarter players of the draft when I was coaching CLG, and we would have separate conversations where every week we'd have a team meeting, and we would sort of map out theoretical drafts, figure out, we would create priority lists for ourselves about which are the top picks that we're favoring in this meta in this week against these opponents. And then we would do sample drafts where we try and pretend to be the other team based on their strengths and think about how they were going to draft. And basically you create a series of documents that say, under this scenario, we're going to draft in this particular fashion.
That all sounds well and good, but I know that that's not actually true. Because what you actually used to do as a coach was you would take teams, you'd work with them in a boot camp, you would design the system, and at the end, they would just go away and just play whatever they saw in the LCK final and just lose the game.
Yep, so that is what actually happened. They in fact, we mapped out everything and then they threw it away. So that was fun for me. No, imagine being like, that's what was so crazy is because we couldn't put anybody in the draft, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was just sitting at
home. You were just
trapped
there. What is this? What are they doing?
It was like the Twilight Zone, dude. I was just in Korea, and I was like, my plans. And then everybody's like, Monte sucks, boot camp sucks. I'm like, you literally wasted our boot camp. Anyway.
So speaking on more modern drafts, what happens is in drafts, you have to do trades. So what Monte said is like the baseline of what happens, where people will list out priorities and you list out trades you're okay with. And people will go through every single trade that's possible. People usually go through about 30 to 40 different scenarios that will give you the first half of draft, and you know everything that's kind of there. People can pick like wacky stuff that isn't priority, then you're like, okay, I'll just take another priority pick.
Yes.
I'll just take another OP pick if you're going to take something.
Because you can be confident in your own execution of your composition no matter what they do sometimes.
This is actually the reason, by the way. Like, if you notice from past shows, like, I've never been a draft expert anyway, so I try not to wade too much into that. But I also personally used to think it was the most overrated factor like 3 or 4 years ago, because people used to act like every game was decided by draft then. But then you'd look at the drafts, and most people did fairly by the numbers drafts, like obvious ones. So even the losing team was getting pretty good champs. The difference is, I'm now interested in draft because you have to do things that you can't have planned for. You can't just come in with your whole whiteboard straight. You have to on the fly. So as a result, it actually basically
more champions, more bands.
It basically means that teams now get an extra benefit for having a good coach. Like, there's another way the coach can affect the game and win you the game.
It's hard to compare because, like I said, there's more bands, so the draft is more complex. There's more champions, and now there are people whose entire job is that. So, like, the depth of it has gone pretty significantly.
And also, we know it's not even that we just like it's already was mad enough that there were so many flexes from mid and top. Now you even have flexes that are ADC and mid. Like, some of the flexes are impossible to predict.
Yeah. Also, jungle support flexes, also mid jungle flexes. Like, even we've even seen top. Like Lucid.
Like, there was nothing compared to that in like 3 or 4 years ago.
No.
You might have had like one champion even flexed, you know, that's it.
Also, regarding how to assign blame and what you can infer is like teams will also tell you what they feel like they're comfortable on and they're not comfortable with their bans and kind of their win rate. Some of the stat that was shown for Caps was he has 55% win rate on Akali, right? That's usually like an okay stat, but for G2, that's a garbage stat. Like G2's average win rate, I would expect it's like, what, 70%? Like
with this roster.
Yeah, with this roster, it's going to be extremely high. They're banning Akali in their series versus Dom 1. And they also didn't do very well with Akali in their final versus, or in one of their best of 5 versus Fnatic, where they had Akali and Nemesis had Silas. So historically, they struggled with Akali, and now they banned it. It's them telling you guys and them telling the world, hey, we're not that comfortable on Akali. We're better on other champions. We'd rather have it banned.
Like, put it this way, like the best example is Fnatic earlier in the year when they had just records on Karma, etc. all the time. They're not doing that because they think him on Karma is the best possible pick for him. They're doing that to cover a weakness and just prop up a different part of the map, aren't they?
All right, we're going to take the next call. We got time for 2 more if we keep our answers somewhat short. Oops. I'm messing it up. Hello, Nako6.
Hello.
Hello, what's your question?
Do you think that the top players have a similar enough understanding of the game to perform at the top level with a new team, like Davis Cup or any other such tournament that is held within a month period?
Yeah, sure, whatever, yeah.
All right, thank you. What do you guys think?
There's concepts that carry over that all the top teams will have, like in terms of like tempo, in terms of like reset, in terms of like what's the best to do here. But every team's understanding of the game is a little bit different from each other. There is like big base like theory that carries over, but like RNG and G2 have very different understandings of the game and like what they think is optimal play.
Yeah, so what I would say is this. Most of the really elite top laners absolutely could go to another team and be really good. The problem is, some of them, based on the style of their team or what help they get, would just look worse. Like, the difference is, the Shy might look the same in every team. I mean, that guy's just so insane. But actually, someone like Wonder, just from not having the other teammates in G2, he would play differently. The strengths he has in the game would be different. Like, I actually think they would just be different players in most cases. Because if you look, the interesting thing in League at the moment is, except for IG, and even they have their own interesting way of playing, you have all these very different styles and totally different teams set up. You can play through any lane in theory. It's
huge champion pools like that we've seen so far this World Championship. I mean, I think the balance of the game is actually in a very good spot right now. So I agree, it's not as significant as it could be. All right, we're gonna take one more call quickly. Hello, Giochi?
Hello?
Hello, Giochi? The crickets. The crickets. Oh no.
Pull out the trapdoor.
You're losing your shot.
Mom spaghetti.
And also regarding the concept that we just answered, that we talked about, as Tanner said, like G2 does that proxy play, Griffin does that exact proxy play. Go back and check the game where they played Galio versus G2. They did that exact proxy play in group stage. It's not like they both talked about it. If they both arrive at the same conclusion, like this play is game breaking, and if you can do it, then we should pull it off.
All right, next caller. Last caller.
Last caller.
Majdalawi 201. Hello, what is your question?
Hello. I just want to say that I think the storyline that Faker is player should be dropped, since a lot of analysts still
You
think
lagged a bit
it
there,
is,
mate.
such
Just
as-
did you say that again? I didn't quite hear it. Say it again, mate.
I'm saying that Faker, best player in the world, should be dropped, since a lot of analysts are saying that he is, such as Vidius and Jat and Diamato in their top 20s. I think there is a lot of myths that are better than him right now, and even plays in other positions. He's the GOAT of the game, right? But I
Oh,
don't
did they
think
say he's the best
right now.
player? Vidius said he's the best player?
Yeah, on number one on the
Oh, I
list.
see what you mean, right. Okay, yes. Okay.
Yes.
So what do we
so
think
I
about the
he
narrative?
should be dropped. Yeah, I think a narrative should be dropped, and that he isn't even close. He's the best even.
Okay. All right. We got that. So basically the question is, do we think that Faker is the best player as said by Vidius and Jat? Both
I think
have
this
them as
ties
number
back
one.
to some of the discussions we already had, because first of all, we've actually gone to pains, I think, during this tournament to stress that even when we thought SKT was the best player, team, like Faker wasn't necessarily even the best player on the team. And in fact, stylistically, they don't really play anything like past SKTs. Like, they don't play around Faker even. Sometimes he is just the mid lane, and sometimes he even lets other people take the picks. So for me, it's more that like, to me, the contrast is like this. I don't even think Faker is the best Korean mid laner. Forget any other category.
Yes.
Before he was just the best player ever of any role. Now it's not even the best in his role in his country. So that's enough said for me.
Right, Rookie, I think, has had an overall more impactful tournament. But again, coming in, it's not possible that Vidius and Jack could have known that because IG was slumping pretty hard coming into Worlds, and obviously one of the big stories has been the Shy and Rookie like balling out of control.
And their assumption was, like, it's like if the Patriots, I know they're going to have an amazing season this split, but let's say they had a bad season, but they just made it in the playoffs. You wouldn't call someone a moron for saying, like, Tom Brady could win the game and be clutch. Like, he has done it a million times. Like, the point is, Faker's just done it more times than anyone else, hasn't he? So as a result, even though in your head you think, well, actually, he isn't the best now, part of you still thinks, he could kick into it for a game, he could kick into it for
Also,
a series.
Clid has been the best player on the team.
Sure.
Throughout this World Championship so far. I think Faker's been very good, but I don't think he's been the number one player. Look, if I had to pick a number one player right now, I'd take the Shy. That's who I would take so far.
Put it this way, this might be the only time where legit Faker could win Worlds, and he won't have been like fully carried, but he'd have been semi-carried.
So I will say,
have been the best player.
Your prediction of number one Perks is actually looking pretty good right now too, because I think you could make an argument for Perks or Caps because they've been incredibly consistent for G2.
Especially if G2 ends up winning it or at least beats SKT. So as for Faker not being the best, but a lot of the analysts putting him number one on top 20, this top 20 was one of the hardest to do because the regions are so even. Usually what you can do is like, okay, 1 to 15, we're going to give that to Chinese and Korean players only. And then the bottom 5, maybe we'll throw Bjergsen a bone.
Or double lift or
double
Reckless.
lift,
Those three basically normally in it, yeah.
This one, you couldn't do it like that. You're like, holy, G2 is legitimate. And if G2 is legitimate, maybe Fnatic's legitimate too. Like some people had that line of thought. So it was actually really difficult to do the top 20 list. And when you're having a lot of difficulty, like picking out that number one player, Faker is never a bad name.
Just a safe pick, isn't it?
Yeah. And also the tournament isn't over yet, so there's still time. And like that's the thing about Faker is, you know, I've predicted against him many times in LCK playoffs, and sometimes, you know, he just 3-0s you and makes some of the most, you know, many of his most insane plays of all time were in finals.
Yeah.
So
bigger the stage, better the Faker.
Right, and he always can do something like surprising or no limits of a champion better than like you even thought were possible. Same could be said about Rookie and the Shy though. So
Caps and Perks also with how they've been playing.
Yeah, I totally agree. So thank you for your call, plebs. Remember that as we finish this show today, that you can submit your memes to #the9s if you follow the Cloud9 Twitter so that they can actually give you your gift card. You have to be 18 or up and in North America. Please send us memes regardless, though. We like to put them on the show. You can check out full episodes in the VOD section of the Twitch right now, tomorrow on the Cloud9 YouTube channel. We also have them up on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for audio only. Follow the Cloud9 Twitch channel so you know our last episode, sadly, of this is going to be coming next Tuesday at this time, which will be 2 p.m. Pacific, 5
Who's
p.m.
going to be on
Eastern.
Any guests?
Yeah, we do have guests. it's going to be Papa Smithy. It's going to be on the show, which will be really fun, obviously. He'll be coming back from Worlds. And Doa will be coming, who's been watching.
Doa, the faker, the moves. Oh my God, faker!
So we'll talk to him about what it's been like watching the World Championship. He was actually at my house. We're watching some of these quarters just the other day. So it's been fun catching up with him. I do believe we have daylight savings.
Yes, it's this weekend.
It's this weekend. So I think we're Europe's already changed.
It's the other way around, I think, isn't it?
No, Europe's already changed. We're changing this weekend.
Right, okay.
So I think it's going to be back at 11 p.m. European time. It was only at 10 p.m. this week. So just be aware, it will be 11 p.m. once again in Europe next week. Still 2 p.m. Pacific, still 5 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
Next Tuesday, last episode. Thank you for watching. Have a very good evening. Monte Cristo, Esports Private Eye, come in.
Monte, I need your help.
What's going on? Calm down there, sweetheart. Tell me what happened.
Griffin, they went deep into IG territory. It was supposed to be a stomp, and I don't know what happened.
Are they dead?
They're dead. They're dead as dead.
All right, calm down. I've got a Gank Wars expert that can help us with this case. I'm going to call Thorin. He'll meet us at the scene, okay?
Okay.
Let's go.
Oh, Griffin. My dear Griffin. Oh my God. You died too young. Tarzan, Chobi, my pick'ems.
Thank you for coming, Thorin. I know you're an expert on gank violence, and I need your take on Griffin dying deep in IG territory.
It's okay. I've seen a lot of team fights in my time.
Okay. The body's been removed, but I have some photos here. Need to identify cause of death. First off, we have some choke marks around the neck.
I can tell you, that's a red herring. Those were from a prior best of 5.
Okay, so not the cause of death. Means it must be this. We have here a stab wound to the stomach. What do you make of it?
I'm afraid that was self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted?
Really?
It seems they used a sword to disembowel themselves.
That's a damn shame. What can we do to prevent this from happening again, Thorin?
Forget it, Monty. It's Koreatown.